Activities Committee meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Yep. Sorry. Mr. Borthwick?
Here.
Mr. Casey?
Here.
Mrs. Chesak?
Present.
Ms. Fox? Ms. Goodmartin? Ms. Merkel?
Here.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mrs. Johnny? Mr. Holmes?
Present.
6 present, 3 absent.
I will now turn it over to the Athletics and Student Activities Committee Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. On the last couple of meetings, we had a conversation concerning the gymnasium at Westside High School, that it may have been a little inferior. I put it on the agenda tonight so that we could start a discussion. My personal point of view would be to one, have a little anybody who wants to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something we've been talking about for a while. I definitely think it's needed. We have to figure out a path forward for the gym. This is what we're talking about, correct, Bob?
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, this thing is... I just texted her up. But yeah, so I think it's definitely time that we take a good look at it and look at options, right? So if we put out an RFP and see what we get back, whether it's a different location at the high school, whatever. But if we get some options to look at and see how much it might cost, I think that should be our first step.
So you'd like to put out an RFP for... For what, Ty? Or John?
We're talking about the gym. Top item number 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, to see the feasibility of where, like, some ideas, right? So since I've been on the board, I know this was passed back in 2015 or around there, that there was options of doing it in the school at West, or at a different location, maybe over at Tripp or something like that. If we put it on an RFP where we have these contractors or architects give us an idea, leave it open-ended to say, hey, we're looking to put this, where do you think would be the best fit? How do you think it, could be done?
So that would be a
cost?
Starting point for design and feasibility study, correct?
Yeah, I think we've been talking about it for a long time, but not knowing the cost, right? We could look at the cost back when it was actually approved back in, like I said, 2015 or 14, I forget when it was. We know those costs have definitely increased significantly with inflation and everything. So let's see what it would look like, and then we can go from there.
So this would be a starting point.
Correct.
I do have it on tier 3 of the RFP list. So we're finishing up tier 1 right now with healthcare. Then we have the next group to release. So it is on tier 3 to do the design and feasibility study.
I understand what you're saying.
I just want to make sure that it is on there as requested.
What's the timetable for tier 3 to start, I guess?
It's going to depend on, I don't want to lock myself into a specific time because it depends on how long it takes. I would have thought we would have been back already with tier 1.
Right.
Healthcare needed an extension and there were issues with it.
Right.
So for me to be like, I'll definitely have it out by May. If I don't do that, then I would be breaking what I promised, and I won't do that.
Okay.
But
So
it is absolutely on the list of RFPs that I sent you guys.
Well, if that's the case, I'd like to get moving on this ASAP. I'd like to have a resolution authorizing the administration to do an RFP as soon as possible. We don't have to act until we get everything in, but at least it'll be a start. Mr. Holmes, can we have a consensus, or how do you do this, on a poll?
I don't think we do it in meetings. We take consensus
A what?
at work session. I'm asking the board.
You can, at a work session, yes.
Pardon me?
You can do consensus at a work session.
What about at a committee meeting?
Oh, at a committee meeting, too.
Huh?
Yes, you can.
So, could we have a consensus of the board if they want to do that for the next meeting, just put on a resolution?
So this would not be to follow the RFP list. This would be to deviate from what I've already put out.
Probably correct, yes. How do we get a consensus, John? Or how do we ask for a consensus?
Jenny would take roll call. If you have
to have a resolution put on the agenda at the next meeting to move up the design and feasibility study of a gym at Westside High School. By no means does this commit us to building a new gym. It's an exploratory step that I think that we have to take.
Just so I understand, is there, like, what is the reasoning that you don't want it to wait for the timetable that the superintendent provided to us? Like, what is the reason to, I get what you're saying of why it's needed, but what the rushing, I guess, like, what is the justification for the rushing of it?
Well, my justification is, I've seen how we've been working on RFPs all this year, and as far as I'm concerned, very few have actually come to fruition. And I know that from my experience in purchasing, that these are usually a long and tedious exercise. And I think that the students of Westside has been denied long enough a proper gym. One of the reasons that this has become like a pet project of mine is, and I think I mentioned it before, is that my daughter played in that gym. My daughter had D1 offers. She played in the gym, she got hurt in the gym. All the D1 offers went by the boards. Now, I'm not caring about the D1 offers. I just think that the Westside people deserve a gym of their own that's actually safe. They can't use the present gym. And I'm only planning on being here another 3 years, and I'd like to have it moved up so that by the time that I'm off the board, I can actually see some progress. And I think that we need to move on it ASAP.
I think for one reason for me to be in favor of looking at it sooner than later, there was a resolution passed almost 10 years ago. So they have been waiting for almost 10 years for this, but I also think we can be creative here. It doesn't have to just be for athletic use. Obviously, it'll be great for the community. When the Scranton Booster Club had it wasn't the Globetrotters, I think it was the Wizards. They had that night out for the community. I went to it was unbelievable. It was packed. We can't do that over in the West Side. I also think, like I said, be creative with it. I know we're looking for some cyber classrooms, because I don't know if we're going to keep them over at Tripp. Maybe that's an option. Build a couple extra rooms in there. Use it for more than just obviously a gym. Use it for a community, and also use it for maybe district business, day-to-day business.
So I'm in full support of this. I was at Scranton High School about a week and a half ago. The gym was absolutely beautiful. I would like to see the Westside High School have the same type of gym, just for more equitable opportunities as far as sports go between the two schools. So I don't know what we need to do to take the next step. I would like to see us do some things at the same time as far as the different tiers that we have. So I'm definitely in full support of this.
I'd like to second what Danielle just said. West Scranton deserves to have facilities that are equal to what's provided to students at Scranton High School, and this feasibility study is a step in the right direction. And when it comes to the various tiers and RFPs, I mean, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can send out 2 RFPs at once, especially since this has been on the docket for, I think it's over a decade.
Well, I think one thing too, I missed to say that the building reconfiguration plan that we received from McKisson did not address this at all. The only way it addresses is if we close a high school. So even if we're going to keep 2 high schools open, that plan there did not address the need for a gym at all. So that was kind of shocking to me. I did bring that up multiple times to the administration, and we never saw an option for it. So I do think we have to have something in place, because we don't know and I know everybody's waiting to hear what Dr. Keating's going to present to us for the building reconfiguration plan. And if it has 2 high schools remaining, which I'm sure it will be, then we do have to find a long-term solution for this.
Mr. President, can I make a comment that might be helpful? Yes. I think it's important, so that administration can carry out the board's intention here to give a little more specificity. If you're going to do an RFP that's going to be meaningful, you're going to need a design and specifications, and that means you're going to have to invest in that cost. But if you're looking for some parameters about, what this might cost before you decide to invest in specifications. The administration can probably do that informally by, through Dewey or contacting some other consultants and getting ballparks. Because I don't know, I'm not sure how you would send out a ballpark RFP and, how you would compensate the,
John, approximately 10 to 12 years ago, the board did receive a feasibility study. And I believe the feasibility study gave you the cost and all that. I have been informed that the person who wanted to do it said that he would upgrade it at no cost. But from what I understand, he was turned down on it.
but are you is the board asking the administration to have created an RFP that can be responded to by contractors or designers or architects?
By architects and engineers. Not construction.
Yeah, we just want, for design.
Okay, yeah, but in order to get an actual price, you're going to have a design.
Well, that
Yeah,
would
yeah,
be one of the...
feasibility study would do that.
You can release an RFP for the cost of the design.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
all that should be included.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is that what the board is saying?
Well,
Of course we would want to know what it costs.
well, I'd like to expedite it and get a cost for the design and possible construction. Do two birds with one stone. We're not committed to either one. So as long as we're doing an RFP, let's get all the information in front of us so we can make a valid...
Well, I think you're going to have a design before you know what the construction costs are. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to clarify what the board's intent is so that the administration follows the direction of the board.
So I just want to give everyone a ballpark figure because obviously part of my plan that I have to deliver to you has to look at financials. The district's borrowing potential is $186 million. That is it. That is the last of the money we can borrow. Those numbers were run by PFM. Mike Vin, I'm sorry, Mike Vin, bond counsel. So that is what we have. Now, $186 million sounds like an extraordinary amount of money. In modern construction, it's not. So the only thing that and again, I did go through this exercise in my previous rotation. We looked at something and our initial step was to release an RFP to get the cost of what would the design specs be, like how much would it cost? Here's the areas we're looking at. Can you come back to us with numbers of what this will cost? And then, like Attorney Freund said, a ballpark figure of overall cost.
So what you're asking for is actually a feasibility and cost analysis.
Yeah, I think that's where you need to start.
Well, then why don't we do that for the next meeting, put a resolution out for a consultant for a feasibility study and a cost analysis for the construction of a facility at Westside High School.
Jenny, do you have that? We do need to take consensus, and you can do that by roll call.
Yep.
Can you do a roll call now?
Do you have an understanding of exactly what it is? Could you read it off?
Feasibility study and cost analysis.
Could you
for
put your
the-
mic closer? I'm sorry.
Feasibility study and cost analysis for the new gym at West High School.
Okay. That's what we're doing consensus on. Roll call, please.
Mr. Casey,
Yes.
Mrs. Chesak,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
No, not at this time.
Ms. Martin,
No.
Ms. Merkel,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni, Mr. Borthwick,
Yes.
and Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
6 affirmative, 2 negative, motion, or consensus.
So you'll have that
6-2.
prepared for the next board meeting under athletics? That resolution?
Well, someone will take care of
need
it.
a
I don't wanna mess
resolution.
Well, I'm asking for a resolution.
I think it would just be a motion.
It would just be a
Well, a
motion.
motion.
Yes.
So if I could just at this time then ask, I know we've talked a few times about and I'm confused on how this will play in with what you're bringing towards for us, but it was spoken about how priority-wise, West Scranton High School needs doors and windows and a chem lab and a STEM lab, and I know that those have to come first because it's education and safety. So can we get those numbers? I don't know how, and I don't know.
The McKissick study, the Dewey portfolio has some of those numbers of what internal costs would be. But yes, there are safety and security and academic measures that need to be updated in that high school.
So I think we have to have those I understand that it's consensus of the board to move forward with this, but in terms of education, we have to make sure that we're having these conversations at the same time, which I'm sure you agree.
No, I understand.
You agree to have those conversations.
And I believe they're already in the planning stages.
Right.
And this would be on top of it.
Right, that's just to how Dr. Keating said we only have 186 million max borrowing, so we have to have those full rounded conversations, that's all.
You know, I was on my way over today, and I was thinking about this, and I know how many RFPs are in the works, and I keep hearing one at a time, one at a time. I remember when I was with the state, I used to have 5 to 10 going at one time.
Do me a favor, could you all talk into the mic? We're here in this band. We can't hear over here. This
That's
band.
the problem I usually have. So I just think that we have very capable administrators who know how to walk and chew at the same time. And I think they could do more than one RFP at a time. And that's what I'd like to task them for.
And this is just to get an analysis of what it
Yeah.
will cost. So this can be added to that number that we're looking at, so.
I don't,
A little bit in my defense, we did release them 6 and 7 at a time, so it wasn't one at a time. Just for clarification on the public record.
no, I understand. I'm just not seeing a lot of them come through.
But we did just approve a number of them at the last board meeting.
Well, I understand that. Maybe it's because I dealt with that as a profession. I'm used to seeing a lot more. And I'd like to see a lot more in the future. But I'll be happy with this resolution. And we'll be on top, we'll be moving the project forward. Thank you. The next item is, it was flag football for girls. Danielle, you asked to have this on?
I did. Thank you, Director Casey. So parents from the community have been reaching out to me regarding an interest in girls flag
Could you
flag
speak into
football.
the mic? We can't hear you over
Yeah, I'm sorry, that it's really hard to hear tonight. So parents from the community have been reaching out regarding an interest in girls flag football. So I reached out to Mr. Geneleza about this, and he was putting some information together. I think this is a great thing. This is a sport that is gaining popularity around the country. Not only would it give our girls another opportunity to play in a sport, but also it has the potential to open the door for college scholarships. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to really let the public know what we've been working on. I know it's not close to being done. There's still a lot of information being gathered, but it would be a good starting point to hear.
Danielle? Oh, when you mentioned this, I talked to Ted Anderson. And correct me, Ted, if I'm wrong, there is no league presently available for girls flag football. Possibly, am I right, Ted, or wrong? Well, Ted, after our conversation, I thought about what you said, and probably a good way to move into a new athletic program instead of diving in and especially when there's no other teams in the area, maybe within West Scranton and Scranton High, start an intramural league to see where the interest is and to shine some light on it. And maybe if we could start planning intramurals, get all of our information and try to have a program set up for the spring.
If I could just add, and I have 3 handouts at your seats, and my one memo from November 13th is the letter behind it is basically me talking to Mr. Bucka and Mr. Anderson, and basically what Mr. Anderson just said. There's really no information out right now. I mean, I don't want to be repetitive here. National Federation has to get the information out. And behind that is a letter from the PIAA basically saying it's just been freshly sanctioned this past September, waiting for more information to be fully implemented for next school year. And I just found out, confirmed from Mr. Anderson, I thought it would be a spring sport, and it looks like it will be for the spring. And behind that letter is out of the upper 500, 600 school districts, schools in the state, basically in the Philadelphia and Pittsburgh area, there's only 64 sponsoring right now.
I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Gentileza, to you, Mr. Anderson, and Mr. Butka for looking into this. So, thank you. I think this is a great opportunity. I know there's, like I said, there's still some work to do, but I think this is a great start.
You're welcome.
Makes sense. Steelers.
Well, possibly, can the athletic directors look into the possibility of an intramural program for the spring and get back to us with a recommendation? How's that, Aaron?
Well, right now, we first need to start with an interest inventory to see how many girls we would have to see if we could even staff an intramural league. And there's no one to play, correct, Ted? How about we start with an interest inventory? We do a survey just to see how many girls would be interested in the sport, and we could bring that back to you at the next work session. How's that? Can you work with Mr. Bucket to do that? We'll start there.
That sounds fine. Is that okay
That'd be
with you?
wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
At least we're bringing it to a forefront. The next one is a presentation by a Mr. Brian Rowan, who has contacted me about the conditions of pretty much, I think it's all of the athletic facilities for Westside High School.
Well, I am primarily focused, this presentation is primarily focused on the football, division, but it will benefit every sport across the board, pretty much throughout everything. My son plays football for West Scranton, and he's been playing football since he's about 7 years old. I'm a former football coach myself. I put a little bit of information on the very back page about myself. The last item is by far the most important. Does everybody have a copy of the presentation? And I have a PowerPoint as well. Now, I don't know if anyone can see that on their screens there or not, or if it's...
You have it in front of
You
you.
just have the paper? Okay, very good. So my son played freshman and sophomore ball, and he kept telling me, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, this is inoperable, that's an inoperable. And, everything a 15-year-old you take with a grain of salt. But he continued to tell me things, and I said, okay. So I decided to go ahead and do an independent investigation and see what I came up with. And I went ahead and do that. And it turns out, I did a comparative study as to the assets of West Scranton versus the assets of Scranton High, and where we stand as far as equity and equality between the two schools and the two football programs. The purpose of this is to seek equity between the two schools, identify opportunities, and increase the safety of our players while reducing liability. When I went to look at the West Scranton practice field, the field is a 20-yard divot in the practice field right here behind intermediate. In the middle of the field, so it only allows them to kind of use half of the field. A student was reportedly, now I have never confirmed this, I haven't talked to any teachers or coaches or anything about this. I kind of did this on my own, and my son helped me with pictures and so on and so forth, trying to figure out what was happening. It was reported a student had sprained his ankle about 2 years ago on the field because of the holes and the divots. He was unable to play several games because of it. It's creating a dangerous environment. It's something that has to be looked at. There's broken glass and garbage scattered about the entire field, and I have inserted photos of this evidence in your packet there as well. They're equipped with one porta potty at the practice field, which many times, and I saw it with my own eyes, has been knocked on its side. Now that's obviously students fooling around, but nevertheless, there are no bathroom facilities, no water facilities, no anything when these kids are out practicing. A lot of times in August, it's very difficult when you're practicing in 95, 98 degree weather. You don't have direct access to water or bathroom. Now, our trainer, my son told me, brings a big container of water, for an emergency, but practice equipment stitched together, damaged, and antiquated. Again, I saw this with my own eyes. A lot of it is very old equipment for practicing. These, you take a look at the photos. That's the main divot in the field there, and photo 1A. Photo 1B are two pieces of glass that were on the ground. There's glass shards scattered all about the practice field. When I do the comparison to Scranton High's facilities, Scranton High has full access to Memorial Stadium, safe practice surface, full access to locker rooms, bathrooms, and water. West Scranton has the option to practice at Memorial Stadium. However, it would require the students to run from West Scranton while carrying backpacks, Chromebooks, and all their football gear approximately 1.6 miles to make it to practice for 3:30 in the afternoon, which is our standard practice time. It's not entirely feasible to do that because a lot of the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors do not have their own vehicles, and those parents are unable to actually get the kids from the school over to Memorial Stadium in adequate time. West Scranton locker room. The locker room at West Scranton, I've backed this up with photographs as well. The locker room has inoperable ceiling fans. Several don't work, others only have one blade. That's in photo 2A. Most of the wooden lockers do not have doors and are falling apart. The players have no way of securing their belongings safely. Photo 2B. The concrete walls are deteriorating. That is photo 2C. The showers are inoperable, contain trash, and it was reported to me again, I did not see this with my own eyes, but there were deceased mice in the showers. And as you can see, 2A is a ceiling fan with one blade, 2B and 2C and 2D are the other areas as well. Comparatively, Scranton High has state-of-the-art climate control in their locker room. Scranton High has fully functional showering facilities. Scranton High has metal lockers to keep the students' belongings safe and secure. The last element I looked into, and I only chose 3 topics, and I know there are many more. I looked at the weight and workout room. Now this I don't have pictures of, but from what I've been told, and this has been reported to me, West Scranton has a limited quantity of workout equipment, much of which is antiquated and or damaged. Many students have to wait in line to use a bench or a machine. It is also, this is a pretty significant situation, and I believe many know about what happened here. It was brought to my attention, this was last fall, I believe, during a workout session last spring, a live electrical wire fell from the ceiling during a workout session, creating a potentially catastrophic safety situation. When we look at Scranton High's workout rooms, again, I didn't have access to Scranton High. Scranton High is equipped with the latest state-of-the-art weight workout equipment, along with a clean and safe environment. Scranton High has access to a second weight room at Memorial Stadium. I know that Mr. Munchak graciously donated a lot of money, which is an amazing guy, a wonderful Scrantonian, to Scranton High for a lot of their facilities, and I thank him for that. What we're looking for is basically just an even, equitable shake at Westside, so that everybody's the same across the board. Two statements that I have was, while driving my son, and I was part of this situation, this is actually what kind of launched me to go forward and look into this and see what the facts were. Because the facts are definitely just the facts. It is what it is. While driving my son and several of his friends to Memorial Stadium for practice, I was included in a conversation between them. One player said, we, a West Side player, do not get the best stuff because we're always number 2. I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, we're West, we're second rate. I said, no, you're not. No, you are not. You're not. Nobody in the school is second rate. Nobody. But then he went on to say, I wish I could go to Scranton High. He said, well, my mom lives in West Side. And I said, no. I said, you are a West Sider. You got to be proud of it. Be proud of it. He said, why? Think about for a moment. Take a moment and think. When we graduate these kids and they go out into the world and they think that they're second rate, why? I spoke to a former player who graduated in 2020. I asked him what his experience was playing for West Scranton. He recalled helping an assistant coach build practice equipment with 2x4 lumber and padding. This is a conversation. It didn't come out too well in the PowerPoint, but my son and I were communicating. He was on his way to the Western Wayne game just this last year. And what he said, I blurted out some of the words in there because he's a West Sider. He said, they have working toilets here. And I said, wow, okay, go for it. I said, you will be able to get a shower when you get home. Speaking of that, they've got working showers with soap dispensers. I responded, take one and install it at West. He said, dude, this place is a house. Automatic toilets, sinks, soap dispensers, working metal lockers, a water bottle station. I said, that's some serious stuff. And he said, even handicap accessible lockers. My feeling, this is standard equipment, but he found it amazing that at Western Wayne, they've got, to him, advanced equipment. So in conclusion, we, us, our public servants, respectfully request equity between our schools. Embrace the opportunities and put forth by this presentation with haste. Reduce liability by creating a safer environment for all of our students through embracing a policy of equity. Promote an environment through measurable actions that will allow students from both Scranton High and West Scranton High that they are all first rate. If you have any questions for me.
Mr. Ron, the Director
Yes.
of Operations, Mr. Rucker, will meet with you as soon as you're done. So he's ready to meet with you. Mr. Rucker, if you could just, he's right there.
Very good.
Thank you.
And I would like for the members, those on the athletic committee, please do a comparative study of your own. This is where I pass the ball to our public servants, okay? This is where I pass you guys and ladies the ball to move forward. Look at the assets of Scranton, look at the assets of West Scranton. This will benefit every sports team that we have and every student and every child in our community. Thank you.
Mr. Ruan, I do have
Yes.
two
Yes,
questions
ma'am.
for you. Number one, I don't know if you would know the answer, but how long have these conditions been present that you're aware of?
I began this study about 6 months ago, started looking into it. I imagine they've existed for quite some time, you know.
Thank
And
you.
and again, I want to add this, if I may. You know, I don't point the finger at anybody. I don't look at anybody as to blame for this. But this is the reality, and these are the conditions. You know, I honestly, I think we've got good staff. We've got, you know, I think we're in order as far as the people, but we can't make a gourmet meal in McDonald's kitchens as the saying goes. You know, we've got a guy like, you know, Jake Minetti. He's a great guy. You know, I don't know him personally, but as a former football coach, I watch how he coaches. He's a young Joe Paterno. That's what we have. We gotta have the right tools. You gotta have the right equipment. Because if we don't, you can't go in, you can't fight a Sherman tank with a BB gun. And that's what we're dealing with the West. We just want equality. We want equality. That's all we're asking for.
My second question for
Yes,
you, have any of these issues been reported to the district? Like, has anyone been made
That's
aware
my
of them?
awareness. Again, this is independent. This is something that I'm doing. And this is me reporting, you know, to the district as to what my findings, you know, were. And I ask that, you know, look deep into it, get the committee together, do a comparative study, you know, the locker rooms, the weight room, everything, and compare it to what Scranton High has. And then you will see for yourself, you know, what I had seen.
So this doesn't happen overnight. So Mr. Laffey, I would say we should probably, like, if we've got to evaluate this if there's glass on the field. I'm familiar with that 20-yard divot. I mean, it's not going to be safe for players if we don't even that out. And the situation with the ceiling fans, the concrete, you know, presumably someone had to have noticed this. And that's, like I said, since it doesn't happen overnight, we need to figure out why this hasn't been taken care of, and then we need to come up with an action plan to address these issues, especially if a live wire fell while people were working out in the weight room. I mean, that's not acceptable.
Yeah, my son was in there when it happened, and the coaches got, you know, reported to maintenance. Maintenance did their job. They got it, you know, tied off, and, you know, but still, it's.
Yeah, this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum, though. So
No.
we need to take a look and work on it.
And the safety and health concern with dead mice too, that's
Yes.
just awful.
I think one thing that I saw in here about using Memorial Stadium more for practice and them lugging the equipment back and forth. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. DeLuca or Mr. Gentileza, when you guys were principals, didn't the maintenance staff bring back their football equipment after practices?
Yes, that's correct. Game days, they would deliver uniforms and things like that. A lot of times, the students would bring their helmets on their shoulder pads back.
Right.
Sometimes, but sometimes it was a mixture of both.
Okay, so that might be something we can start up again to.
The main problem was, as Mr. Williams said, Mr. Knapp, they were able to do it for Thursday night practice for a home game because it's almost impossible to lug 30 pounds of equipment almost 2 miles across on a daily basis.
Right.
That's only for our home games, that's 5 practices a year. If we have 5 home games, so they're able to bring their equipment, leave it there Thursday night for Friday's football. And then it comes back Monday for JV games, for other places, practices for varsity, back up to the rest of the conference.
Okay.
So it's 5 practices.
Okay, and I also think that, we talked about the weight equipment in the weight room. I was down there this summer with Coach Minetti. I did see it. It does need an improvement. I know Scranton is getting old as well. I wonder if there's something we could look into with our grant writer. Maybe there's a physical fitness, health, some kind of grant we can look into, maybe kind of help get that rejuvenated for
Yeah.
this one, you know, even if other schools that we have.
There's independent grants, federal, state. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of different foundations we could approach, you know.
Okay.
Mr. Holmes, from everything that I'm hearing tonight, this isn't just a one fixed item. It's a multitude of items that need to be fixed over a period of time and a period of financial help. What I'd like to see done, under your direction as president, is possibly set up an in-house committee of the business manager, the 2 athletic directors, the principals, create a priority list of what needs to be done and the order that we'd like to see that we can do them as far as a timeline and financial. And I'd like it to be an ongoing committee, just not so that we have Mr. Wan or another parent here from West Side come and speak, and then they leave, and then it's forgotten. I'd like it to be an ongoing committee to start the improvement of West Side athletic facilities.
Yes, I think that's the superintendent's call. She can direct the full-time staff to do this without us having to do anything other than saying, could you work together with your full-time staff, collaborating with your principals and directors and come up with this list?
Principal Stevens will be in touch with you tomorrow morning.
And including the parents from the athletic programs. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Wan, for your concern.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, the
So-
next...
Wait, I'm sorry, Dr. Casey, could I just ask
I'm
one
sorry.
more question? Could I ask one more question on this?
Yeah, sure.
I guess, Dr. Keating, Mr. Laffey, like, is this all new to you, what you're hearing? All of this?
There was something in the board packet when I first got here within the first couple months about the field conditions, part of the construction. So there was something sent out about the field conditions. The locker room area needs work. I talked to somebody about it when we were down there the first day of school. That was the first time I was ever down there, but not to the extent that was just told to me right now.
So,
I have full color photos in this presentation, which I'll leave up, but, best thing, take a walk over and check it out. It's
You know what, Aaron?
But Mr. Ruwan just admitted he did not raise these complaints to anyone, Director Young.
right, but I'm saying nobody within West Scranton High School, our athletic director, our principal, nobody has brought this to anybody on the central admin team's attention? None of it?
The field conditions, again, were in a board packet because they were raised.
Okay.
The weight room and the locker room have not risen to my office. They have now and will be addressed.
Okay.
And the only information I received also previously was some equity between the use of Memorial Stadium for practices.
Right.
I did discuss that with the AD at West Scranton High School. Obviously, as Mr. Ron just indicated, while it's available, it is somewhat of an inconvenience for the students, I think, to have to be able to get there. I do know that they have the opportunity to practice there on Thursday evening before their Friday home games, but all the other issues that we discussed tonight on why practicing at Memorial Stadium is difficult was one of the issues we discussed.
Dr. Keating, one of the things that I've been speaking to Mr. Laffey about was the possibility of us going down to the state surplus in Harrisburg. And it's been my experience working with the state, it's almost, the best way to put it is it's a huge flea market. Things may be there today, they may be gone tomorrow. And it isn't like, well, all the lockers are gone, we got to order new ones. It's a hit and miss type deal. But I do know from my past experience, there has been times where there has been lockers there in excellent condition. There has been weight equipment there that the district can purchase at a relatively inexpensive cost. Now, I know that Mr. Laffey and I were planning on going, no date set, but possibly, Pat, if we can go down within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we could at least get an idea of what might be there and what we can possibly get to help the West Side situation at a very minimal cost. And we could actually find out how to do business with the state surplus for other items in the district, not only athletics. And this might be a way that we could start helping the people from West Side.
I have one final question. I was just wondering who from the district actually oversees the facilities that Mr. Ruwan described? Like, is there like a single person? Is it like a bunch of...
It's a combination of people. If you run a high school, you as the high school principal or any principal walks their facilities, but I would never put it on one person because there's operations. And as a superintendent, ultimately, Director Chesak, it is my responsibility. I own it. I will never put one of my people down. I need to own it. He's going to speak to the Director of Operations. I already texted the principal to meet with him tomorrow morning, and I'm on top of it. I take full responsibility.
Thank you. I wasn't, I'm not pointing the fingers. I'm just saying, like, if someone's checking these facilities routinely,
Yes.
that's all I
Nope.
was asking.
Absolutely, positively, in the end, the superintendent's responsible. I will own it.
Aaron, I'd recommend that we look forward, not backwards. We now know that there is a possibility of a problem that exists. Let's address the problem and just go forward with this. Make what's wrong right.
That's all we ask, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, next item, Mr. Ron, thank you very much. Next item is building reconfiguration. I don't know who put this on, but we'll entertain whatever you want to talk about on it, if it pertains to athletics.
It doesn't. You know, but it's on Jenny.
Pardon me?
I've requested it. I think it does pertain to the conversation we're having this evening, particularly in light of the gym for West Scranton. I feel very concerned that we're discussing these items in a vacuum. We're discussing one-offs, and I think everything that has come before this body tonight just goes to show that we're not going to get anywhere if the superintendent and her team can't focus on a list of priority issues in a reasonable time frame. So I think it's only fair to be looking at this in the context of the full picture. And I know, Dr. Keating, you have a timeline for a recommendation. I guess just an update on that.
I've met with, obviously, PFM actually at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I have another meeting with PFM on what is financially possible. As I said, the largest issue is we have $186 million worth of borrowing capacity, and the average cost of building anything new is between $350 and $450 per square foot based on what I'm finding right now. Those are rough estimates. Don't hold me to them by the dollar. So there's issues with what's possible to be done that I'm running into as I'm slowly starting to do this. If we had an unlimited budget, it would be different. But when you're operating within $180 million of work, and today I met with Act 93, who's extremely concerned because the cameras still haven't been updated in buildings. And that's a $1.7 or $1.8 million investment.
Interior things.
Just to get safety and security where it needs to be. It's playing a juggling game of what can we afford and what can't we afford. So yes, I have major concerns right now of what is actually possible with that number. And remember, it's like all of us. Once you max your credit out, you have no more credit to borrow. So if a boiler goes or a roof goes or something catastrophic happens, our borrowing capacity is no longer there. And again, I would love to operate in a world of unlimited funds. But there's a lot of you at this table who, because of your own worlds in business and industry, are well aware of how finite 186 actually is.
I don't want to turn this into a budget and finance discussion, but is $186 million of borrowing realistic? Is that, I understand that's our capacity, but that doesn't come free, correct?
That's part of what we're working with PFM on to see, obviously, as you just noted, that's what our base is that we can borrow against currently right now. The question becomes is what can our budget sustain at the
Right.
The plan that I have initially come up with to present to you, and again, it's a plan. You guys could tell me we don't like the plan, start over again. It's just a plan. Obviously, everything I do has to be run through Dr. Saylor and it has to be run through PFM because we have to see if financially what I'm suggesting is even possible. The other thing that I've started to do is meet with some of the local developers in the city of Scranton and ask them, you know, what would a building go for? Could we make any money? Is this land buildable? Can we do stuff here? So like, I'm trying to exhaust all of the answers to be able to say to you, okay, here's my plan and this could actually work. And it's actually possible to do. And again, it's a plan. You may hate the plan and you may say, start over again. But I was very surprised that our max credit is $186 million. Now, if you look at the Dewey binder, we have $350 million worth of upgrades that would have to happen if we kept all the buildings. So we don't have the borrowing capability to do what's in that giant binder behind my desk. So then it becomes a pick and choose moment. I want every kid to have equal access to everything. But I think the West Scranton gym is a wonderful concept, but I also think a chem lab is really necessary for college-bound kids. I think that equal STEM programs is awesome, but I also think that interior doors and windows have to have safety and security to them. So you're right, there has to be a priority list because 186 is 186, and we don't have anything over that. And I am not a financial person. That came from the financial people. Because I need to know what I'm operating in to try to see what can be done. Trust me, guys, and I'm speaking very openly and publicly at a meeting. I walk around some of our buildings, and I'm like, hey, there's cable wires being zip-tied to the ceiling because we can't run the infrastructure to supply the technology that we need for that building. It's nobody's fault. It's the fact that the building is so old that that's the only way that we can run the cable wire. So there's a lot of things that I see as I walk. You know, the schools that were built in the early 1900s, they're not made for loud classrooms that we have with a lot of our exceptional population. So that sound reverberates through the entire building as other children are trying to learn. There's a whole environmental concept that goes to looking at these buildings as well. I would love to have a checkbook. One day, if I have a crown and a wand and an unlimited checkbook, wait till you see what I'm capable of doing. But without a crown and a wand and an unlimited checkbook, I got to work within what we have. And 186 is not a lot.
Aaron, I don't disagree with you. I commend you for your foresight. What we're discussing here tonight as far as the possibility of a gym over at Westside High School, by the feasibility study and the cost analysis, it's not costing us anything, but it's giving us the information to make a valid decision. That's all we're asking for here. There hasn't been one person here tonight who said, I'm firmly committed to a gym. They're firmly committed to finding out the information that has been long overdue, that has been done 10 years ago by a former board, and it keeps getting put on the back burner. Am I aware that we need doors? Am I aware that we need other things? Yes, we are. But right now, my committee is for the athletics, and I'm addressing the athletics. And I'm trying to get the information to present to this board so they can make a valid decision. I'm not asking anybody to make a commitment tonight, and by no means should this mean to anybody in the West Side community that they're getting their gym right away. It's that we're looking into the cost analysis the same way that we would look into doors, windows. It just happens to be that athletics is my committee. It's been brought up to me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm asking the board to look at it from an athletic point of view. And if the numbers come back and we can't afford it, then we can't afford it like anything else. But before we make, if we're going to make a solid judgment that we can't afford it, at least we need to know what we can't afford. And as I said, this is on the agenda because it's athletics. If it was something to do with science, I'd be bringing the same issue up on science, and we'd probably be getting the same argument, well, we can't afford that. I walked over in Scranton High School, and I went up to the old, where I had at the old Scranton Tech, chemistry. And what I was surprised at is that the lab tables that I almost failed chemistry, this is my committee, and I'll wrap it up when I need to. Yes, you're out of order, Mr. Holmes. You are out of order. But the bottom line is, okay, I'll wrap it up. We'll now go to the next program, equity in school programs.
I just wanted to say one last thing about Dr. Keating's remarks, if I could. First of all, I appreciate your honesty, Dr. Keating. I've kind of been waiting for that. I've been waiting for you to really speak now that you've had an opportunity to get a handle on our finances and what's going on. So your remarks are very much appreciated. And I just have to throw this out there since we're talking about wish lists. One of my first meetings with Dr. Keating was I had real concerns about we haven't met the basic level 1 safety issues. So I'm going to just toss that out there and be on the record that we still haven't met those. So we've got to find the money for that. Those are issues that I can't say clearly what those are here in public, but all of us sitting here know what those are, and they're not met. So we've got to find our focus on this board. I feel like we've lost our focus. And if we can't focus on basic safety, if the teachers are going to Dr. Keating and saying there's not PA systems in the schools, they have safety concerns. So I just wanted that on the record.
Okay, I'd like to keep this relating to athletics and extracurricular activities. And the next one is update on the auditorium.
Did someone
We
have
missed
something on-
equity and
We didn't end up
after-school
talking about that
programs.
one yet.
Oh.
Is there a grade level, or, because I was just a grade level, or is it high school based, or is it middle school based that we were looking at this?
No.
Okay.
This is a very broad
Okay.
question, and before I ask that question, thank you. I echo what Director Yanni just said. I think that's the most realistic conversation we've had at this board table in a long, long time. And it's reality, and we have to work within the confines of reality, and I appreciate your candor. I am just broadly concerned with some of the items that were brought forward this evening. Again, we all agree, we want to have every activity, every opportunity, but resources are finite, whether they're dollars or staff or rooms to do these things in. What I want to know is there a process, and if it's different at each level, that's fine. And if that doesn't exist, can that be established, or are we somewhere in between where it just needs to be fine-tuned and perhaps articulated?
So the secondary schools, the 3 intermediates and the 2 high schools have clubs. Ironically, this was a concern brought up at the SFT as well. Because over the years, and to no fault of anybody, what has happened is, say West Scranton Intermediate has a newspaper club and couldn't staff the newspaper club. After it was posted and nobody wanted it, they may turn that into the chess club. That is an example. That is not anything that is true. I'm just using that as an example. So you may have different things at some of the schools because stuff has been shuffled around like that. The SFT asked me any open positions to please make sure that they were posted. So I can send it to you guys in the board packet. I have a list of the 5 secondary schools, all of the clubs, who are the advisors, and how many hours they have for those subjects. I have that. Some of it is lack of interest by students. Some of it is maybe there's not an advisor for it, that they've kind of become different in the different buildings. I actually just met with Julie Schmader-Cohen from the University of Scranton this morning to try to build out more partnerships with what we could do with the U. And one of the things that I said to her was, we need to give the middle schools more, because that's that vulnerable population of kids that just needs more after-school activities and more things to do and more things to engage them so that they have options beyond going out on the streets after school. So that's something I'm working on and trying to engage local partners with. We did start at Northeast Intermediate School an MMA partnership this year. That's a pilot there this year. We're seeing how that goes at this time. And then we're looking to find something for the 2 other middle schools. And Mr. Anderson's the audience, the PIAA is sanctioned athletics. We're not running any club sports, right, Ted? Right. So all of our sports are sanctioned. They're contractual. All the coaches are part of the contract. And they're the same at both schools, correct? Right. So we have equity in the athletic opportunities. I would love to see, again, if I had an unlimited checkbook, the junior high sports program come back to build those feeder programs for older sports. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for that one clap. Again, but it's finding the money and how can we do that and finding the field time and finding everything else. But your athletic programs are built on that. And I mean, I'll use Old Forge as the example. The junior Devils go into the junior high team, goes into the high school team, and it's why they're a powerhouse, and they are who they are in football, because they have this amazing feeder program from 6 years old to the day you graduate. So I think there's things that we have to start looking at with opportunities like that. We did put the music lessons back in for 5th grade this year. Hopefully that's a catalyst to get more people involved in music, because I think that the music and the arts is such a necessary part of kids being engaged in school. So I'm hoping we can keep growing things there, but it's not an overnight fix, and it's going to take a little time, and I'll make sure you have that club stuff in your board packet this week. It's already done.
Aaron, if you could schedule an hour to meet with me after Thanksgiving, I have some ideas how we can raise money without raising taxes to help some of these athletic programs.
Partnerships are going to be huge to make a lot of this happen. And I will say that a lot of the senior staff is out now engaging the city. Mr. O'Donnell's out engaging the city. We're trying to get involved with a lot of different organizations to build those partnerships, like the library when you asked about it, Director Chezik. Like today, looking at the University of Scranton is going to open a new STEM building, trying to get our 6th graders to be able to go there, and how can we build that into the budget so that they can do those programming. We're going to need to keep building on those partnerships.
Aaron, I agree with you. I'm speaking purely from an athletic chairman's point of view on how we may be able to raise some money to afford different things that different people haven't thought of. I'm sure that we're not the only school district in this, and we're not inventing the wheel, but I do believe from people that I spoke to that there is money out there that we can go and we can get for sponsorships. Am I keeping you up by any chance?
Keeping me up? No, but I'm listening. I just wrote
Okay.
down to raise money, 1-hour meeting, Bob Casey.
Well, when I asked for this meeting, Aaron, I asked for it to be alone because I knew that there was a lot on the agenda. I'll move forward. Can we now have an update to the auditorium?
Mr. Rucker.
In regards to the West Scranton High School auditorium, we did meet there again today. I received the quote from the members of the Stagehand Union working through a local contractor that they deal with. Stagehands cannot engage us directly. Price on that's around $2,500 to pull everything out of the ceiling and render it safe. We also reviewed some options at other buildings in regards to upgrading lights. That is something that will end up having to go out for some form of solicitation. That is not something we are prepared to move forward with at this moment, but we're starting to do our research on.
So essentially, though, what it comes down to is Scranton High School needs lights. They need a new lighting system, and they can be operable. West Scranton High School literally needs to remove everything out of the ceiling and start all over again, and it would require abatement and a lot of work. My previous district was about $370,000 to redo the auditorium and didn't require that much extensive work. So you're looking upwards of $600,000 to $1 million.
I would probably err more toward that $1 million mark. I believe there was a show or something recently, a play where they used a water fixture, and it looks as if that water fixture, while it was during the play, leaked, and we have a large bowed spot in the stage floor now. So there's a bit more into that. I believe even at West High School, I'll have to go back and check, but I believe there's a possibility for some abatement underneath the stage that if we were to do it, could be pulled out.
So just so everyone has the 5-year-old's understanding, at West Scranton High School, literally what they have to do is, if you look up right now and see all these lights and all these runners, that $2,500 is they're going to go up and take all that out of the ceiling. Not replace it, just get it out so it's safe for people to be on.
Now, take it down to the floor, render it safe, and then take the existing rigging and render it safe. So if you look over, and I believe it's on this side, you'll see the rigging, which is the ropes and the pulleys and the counterweights. A lot of times, especially at West Scranton High School, some of those pulleys and counterweights are suspending about 600 pounds of weight in the air to counterbalance the weight of the curtains to make them go up and down evenly. So there's thousands of pounds of weight sitting in the air that have to be rendered safe.
But you just said this stage is also, there's a bow on the stage floor now too, right?
Yes.
So is it unsafe to use the stage at all?
It has to be assessed, because that you
Yeah,
just saw today.
it's a bow in there. Yes, I just now saw that
You
today.
can repair a stage, by no means am I an expert in stage repair, but you can repair a stage with removing certain boards or replacing boards.
Yes.
I've seen it done at numerous schools. That isn't the main issue, and that's something that's new.
Right, everything else.
Everyone looks up. Like, so there's not gonna be any lights. There's not gonna be any stage runners. There's not gonna be any side curtains. It's literally going to be
A
a
shell.
blank stage. Yes.
Can they use it? I mean, it's pretty much ineffective, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Pretty much ineffective doing that, correct?
Well, we
They
need
won't
to
be able
pull it out of the.
put plates on.
I'm sorry. We definitely need to pull it out of the ceiling to render it safe, so that way they can at least use the stage for something. But using it for any other purpose besides practice is
Yeah,
there's
the
no other
aesthetics
purpose.
of the stage are going to look like a shell. That's the best word.
But then
Let
are
me
they
ask
getting
you-
portable lights or something to be able to use the stage?
We didn't even go, we needed to get just the assessment of what it would cost to bring everything down to make it a safe space. And when we talked, the first thing I said was, we need to get a cost on this, because there's holiday concerts and I know last year I went to see Puffs when they did the spring play, so there's other things that are taking place. But right now, like, I just want everyone to know the level of what has to be done, and it's significant.
Okay.
So from what we heard this evening, West Scranton High School needs a new auditorium at approximately probably close to $1 million.
Well-
And they need a new gym, and they need doors and windows, and a chem lab and a STEM lab.
Correct. So the seats and everything are fine, and they did put a new sound system in like a year or two before I got here.
Yeah, it was a while back. Yeah.
Right.
The
so it's,
seats are gorgeous over there. They're very nice.
yeah, the lighting and the curtains are what we have to look at. I gave you a rough, when we redid the high school, I gave you a rough ballpark of what it cost us to take everything down and reinstall LED lighting, but I didn't have some of the other issues that we're gonna run into there.
And also your house lighting. There's a significant amount of work that needs to be done in that area.
So, Dr. Keating, could you and your team come up with a plan for both high schools so that they can have their productions? I don't know, can we rent somewhere for them to be able to put on their productions? I mean, to some of these kids, it's just as important as the sports team
Right.
they're on.
And you do have this stage.
And you do have
Okay.
an auditorium at
Okay.
Northeast
Which is
and
magnificent.
Southeast.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe
Yourself.
we could talk to the principals and then the directors of those
Okay,
programs.
He's
And
making a face, so they're not safe either?
We're having them evaluated, but I will tell you now, right off the top of my head, that I'm not confident in that. But we are going to have them evaluated.
So we definitely want to come up with a plan, because, and I know too, from my son doing drama, like they're over there for, several months ahead of time, and they're marking everything on the stage, so they would need access, all the players would need access to those stages to practice on, I mean, for all of their dance moves, so, I don't know. I'd like to be able to do something for all of our
This-
theater students.
This stage is
We're getting all of them evaluated. Every stage will be evaluated.
Right, but
Right,
I'm
but
just saying the time frame. If we could, I know they do their spring productions, and that's a really big deal, so. I'd
Yes, like
to
you were
see-
saying, I just make sure that it's as important as athletics to people, because students get scholarships for athletics, but they also get college rides for productions.
Sure,
So
sure.
we don't want to take that away.
Colleges also look at your extracurricular
Right.
activities.
Excellent.
And
Yeah,
that's a
good point.
major part.
It is a big point, yeah.
I will meet with them, and I will have a plan.
Thank you. If nobody has anything else, the athletics committee is adjourned.
Excuse me, wait 1 second, I'm sorry. I don't know if I don't have an updated agenda, and I only need 3 seconds because I know nothing about lacrosse.
Oh,
I
So
pulled
I
that.
think 4.04, is it still on, or is that
I
taken off?
pulled it.
Oh, you pulled it.
After discussing with,
All right, so I don't have an update.
the only reason why I put it on is because I realized that's an up-and-coming sport. And I noticed that Abington and Prep all have it, and looking at a way that we may be able to attract some students to our district that may not come. And I think I'm looking at it like trying to build our enrollment up. But I was told that we have no interest, or maybe we could do a survey on that.
I think I heard that field hockey has the highest scholarships.
I'm gonna tell you, principal of Wyoming Valley West High School, I signed 5 Division I girls scholarships in field hockey on one day.
Well,
The most turned away scholarships are girls golf.
the reason why I'm sort of more knowledgeable than the average director on all these is because my niece did play in the Olympics for field hockey, and her
You
husband.
didn't bring field hockey for it?
Huh?
You didn't bring field hockey for it?
No, because her husband is the actual #1 lacrosse player in the world. So, but people have anything else? I'll call the athletic meeting for adjournment, and I will excuse myself because I need to run out and give Mr. Sumas something out of my car, and I need to take care of some personal matters.
Motion adjourned. Call to order the education meeting, roll call.
Mr. Borthwick?
Here.
Mr. Casey? Mrs. Chesak?
Present.
Ms. Fox?
Present.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Present.
Ms. Merkel?
Present.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mrs. Jani?
I'm here.
Mr. Holmes?
Present.
9 present.
Now turn the meeting over to Director Merkel.
Thank you, Director Holmes. I'm not going to give a report at this time. I just have some updates. Mr. Gentilezza, building scores, PVAS.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, since our last education meeting, I did tell you there was going to be a flurry of data, and I have another packet for you. That first page is just a review. You've seen that page before as far as our test scores, PSSAs, SATs, Keystones, all that, ACT on our subgroups. That you've seen before. Since that has come in, our Future Ready PA Index is our new public school report. It's got a grand total of 12 targets, and just about all of them there are reviewed with the orange headings. 6 of them are federal accountability measures, and it's achievement, growth, college and career ready, ELL, attendance, and graduation. So again, please look at it. If you have any questions, we have the 3 colors, dark blue, green, or red. There is no yellow. There is no light blue. So determining on whether or not we exceeded, met, or fell below the targets will be the color diagram. An up arrow means that we increased from last year. A down arrow, we could have a down blue, we could have an up red. A down arrow means we decreased a little bit last year. A circle means we pretty much maintain the same. Tons of information there. I could spend all night, but please take a look at it. After that, I did put our building level scores. Our building level scores is our new public school report card, which is our old SPP. It's based on a 100-point scale, and the 5 colors are in play: dark blue, light blue, green, yellow, and red. The scores for each school are there on a 100-point scale. We did manage to have 4 schools in the green area. And then I did add, PVAS is not a test. PVAS stands for the Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System, which will determine your growth, which means where the students are directed as far as predicting going in the future, and achievement, which is where they are at a single time. It's a statistical analysis of both. That's what PVAS is, and we've had great growth grades over the last few years. There's 15 targets for growth, and that's grades 4 through 8 in PSSA, ELA, math, 2 in science, because it's only tested every 2 years, and the 3 keystone subjects. That's a total of 15. We don't have growth in grade 3 because it's grade 3. It's the initial year. So we begin growth in grade 4. So out of those 15 targets, Scranton School District met or exceeded the PA standard of academic growth out of 12 of them. So that's pretty impressive. And all the guidelines and all the results are there for PVOS. I'm proud to say that we did rank the public school, the public access to PVOS just came in Thursday, and in my opinion, I think we did pretty well. Three, we scored in the dark blue. In ELA, PSSA, we ranked 137 out of 647 districts, which is the top 21%. In biology, we ranked 164th out of 581 districts, which is the top 28%. In literature, we ranked 114th out of 583 districts, which is the top 19.5%. So our growth is really doing well, and the 15 targets are definitely outlined in this packet. And at the end of the packet does include our PSAT results, which is the preliminary scholastic aptitude test, a little bit of a rundown for our 10th and 11th graders. It's like a pre-test before they take the actual SAT. So that's all the data that came in since our last meeting, which was a data flurry, which really picks up preliminary with scores that come out in June. So the final end result is pretty much came last week. So believe it or not, we're ready to roll with our next round of testing for the winter keystones, which will start right after Thanksgiving. So
Director
please-
Merkel, may I speak for a second?
Yes, you may.
If I was sitting here right now and I looked at these scores, the first thing I would say is, what are you going to do about them? So I just want you to know that working with Dr. Saylor, and Mr. DeLuca is really taking a charge on this right now. We've partnered with the University of Virginia, the Darden School of Business, on their partnership in Leaders in Education. We'll be sending our 3 middle school principals, in addition to the principals from our 3 largest elementary centers, to the University of Virginia. I'd like to thank the Department of Education, PDE. They are sponsoring this, and it is a very hefty bill. It is $500,000 or more for us to be part of this. Today, Rob and I were on a call with the University of Virginia, where schools who have successfully completed this program have seen double-digit growth in their academic achievement scores following through this. It is intensive. It is a lot of work. We have already begun doing that. The University of Virginia was out here in September doing focus groups with teachers, with administrators, with staff members to gather the culture, the climate, and the feel for where we are right now. We'll be sending an executive leadership team to the University of Virginia in March. We also have, Rob, Core Change for Leadership. Is that what it was today?
Yes, core change team.
Core Change Team, which began their first meeting with the University of Virginia today. It is a 20-year program that has been shown to make huge differences. I can send you the research on this. Pat was with me. It's unreal when you get down there. And again, this is no cost to the district. PDE, through Dr. Saylor, is sponsoring this for us, and that's one of the major professional development steps that we're taking to be able to start addressing these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Gentilez, and thank you, Dr. Keating, for that update.
And those are the updates I love hearing, so thank you for sharing that.
Mrs. Griebeck, MTSS updates?
Good evening, everybody. Please excuse my hoarse voice. The last time we met, I talked about that the district had received critical supports through Patan and the NEIU for MTSS. MTSS, as you recall, is a way to tier in supports for students who are struggling. They can be struggling academically, socially, emotionally, and with trauma. The good news is, and I wanted to share, is that Patan and the NEIU have scheduled 3 virtual training days coming up very soon. The first one will be with administrators in the district. The second one will be a cohort of elementary principals, and the third one will be a cohort of secondary principals. Following that, every school who has a cohort team of MTSS members will also then receive individual in-school consultation on new enhancements, so then they can share those with their school staff and faculty. So it's a very long, in-depth process. It takes time to do it and to do it well, but the next phase I wanted to share with you tonight, and that's the training that's going to be taking place. Any questions?
Mrs. Griebeck? Thank you, Ann.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ms. Jeanette, special ed?
Ginny.
Good evening, everybody. I was asked to put together for you special ed numbers. So what I did was I have on the first sheet you will see the schools, the disabilities, and the numbers that are in each of the schools broken down according to disability and school. As you can see, we have 273 autistic students in our schools these days. We have 1,356 learning support, 196 emotional support, 133 life skills kids, but 33 of those students are 19 to 22. 20 multi-handicapped. We have 362 that are just speech. We have 6 visually impaired and 19 hearing impaired. That gives us 2,365 students, and that doesn't count the 6 that we have in prison. If you look below that, I have put there for you, these are the kids, as we call it, in the hopper for diagnostic they're all in for diagnostic placements. Right now we have 126 elementary students, that's K to 4. We have 43, which would be 5 to 8, and from 9 to 12 we have 21, giving us 190. You will also notice that, especially at the intermediate school level, we're doing evaluations at St. Paul's, Triborough Academy, and DePaul. So we not only do the evaluations in our district, but if we have a student in our district who's attending an outside school, we also have to take care of their evaluations. If you flip to the next page, these are the students that are placed outside our district. We have right now 54 that are placed outside our district, and that's just within our local Lackawanna County. I didn't have a number for kids that are in behavioral health, Devereaux, placed by juvenile probation or something. They're not included. So with that being said, right now we are circling about 2,400 special ed students. And that's as of this afternoon. The other 2 things that I wanted to bring to your attention, and I'm so happy to tell this, we had our own balloon parade at Monticello this year, and we had the cutest little turkeys, kids dressed up in little turkey things, and if you look on the website, you will see pictures from that. And the other thing that we did, I shouldn't say I did, Mrs. Bradley did over at Armstrong. The autistic classes did a lesson on farm animals, and I don't know if you know this, but Mrs. Bradley has a horse farm, and Mrs. Bradley brought down a pony, and the kids saw how the pony was transported and how he was taken off the trailer, and they got to feed him carrots and apples, and there's pictures on the website of that too. So they were 2 activities that, and they were all autistic students that participated in both those activities.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay. Any questions? No?
Anybody have a question? Any questions? So as you can see, our numbers in special ed continue to grow. STEM and SEALs, Ms. Miller?
Hello, good evening. So last month I had talked a little bit about the STEELS updates with the state. I had actually just spent the past Thursday and Friday down at the Pencil Conference in Harrisburg looking at the professional learning behind the Steele's changes from the state level. And I know last month when I spoke with you, we talked a lot about the pathway at the high school level and some of the concerns that we were seeing. In order to implement the Steele standards to meet the state mandates and guidelines, we are going to be pushing the pathway changes off. Scheduling begins, first meetings start in mid-December. And so to try and rush through and make changes without fully vetting them and making sure they're in the best interest of the students, we felt it would be a much better approach to actually pause and wait on those while we switch over all of the curriculum across K through 12 to meet the Steele's mandates, and then go back and look at the concerns that some of the teachers had with potential changes and additions that we can make to better suit our students, especially with the financial literacy mandates that the state is coming out with and those high school requirements. We want to make sure that we're not pigeonholing any students at the high school level. So that was one of the things we decided to table after curriculum writing concludes. K through 8, we met with 3 different vendors. The teachers are working through their scoring rubrics to see which of the resources we would like to pilot and moving forward in that direction. STEM is beginning to write their 11th grade curriculum for students next year for 11th grade. I continue to speak with some of the colleges on any kind of partnerships and programming that we can offer students. I recently just helped with Ms. Cosgrove and Mr. Ricardo and Mrs. Toy on the PA SMART grant for computer science and engineering across the middle school and the high schools, which brings me to tech ed at both Scranton High and West Scranton High. The updates to the new room at West Scranton High in the basement for the CAD engineering lab in esports, as well as the CAD lab at Scranton High School. And the furniture and all the materials have all arrived. We are just waiting on the desks. They were supposed to be arriving this Friday. It looks like they're going to be arriving closer to December 4th, so not too far off. But the chairs have already arrived, and the installation team will be coming to put those together so that lab will be up and running. And part of the PA SMART grant, if we're lucky enough to be a recipient, we are partnering with Lackawanna and Johnson College on some teacher training and professional development, as well as curricular materials for both of those areas. And then the last one was, so the trout in the classroom was another thing that we had worked with STEM. I have also reached out with LACOAC and one of the other community partners for trout in the classroom, and it looks like that is something that they may be funding to expand into some of our other buildings as well. That's all I have for this evening. You're welcome.
I just want to say I recently had a tour of the STEM Academy, and it was so impressive. It was great seeing all the students and everything that they had going on. So great things are happening there. So exciting.
Mr. Suma, do you have any updates, or since we talked last? Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Suma on technology? Mr. Bucket emailed me today. As of today, we have 799 students in cyber school. But it fluctuates. He told me the numbers fluctuate a lot. It started after the first quarter now. They could fluctuate.
You'll go up in the spring semester.
Yeah. Dr. Keating, pre-K updates?
I had a meeting today with Ms. Boland. They are still seeking further clarification on the partnership with ACE and with Head Start, and at this time cannot commit to an agreement. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., representatives from Head Start will be in to answer and give clarification to the questions that were asked, and I will be putting a memo in the board packet.
Thank you so very much.
So in order to have our first class in January, we would
I have
need
to have it on the December 9th motion, so I'm giving it the varsity try right now.
All right, appreciate it.
Okay, a couple discussion items that came up, speech and debate at both schools.
To bring that back,
I don't know, Director Cheswick asked for it, and she said she got clarification, but I don't know what it is.
when the club information goes out, you'll be able to see all
Okay.
the clubs that are there.
Okay.
So that may be a good jumping point off Director Chesak.
Okay.
And I will have that in the board. I'll actually email it to you guys tomorrow morning because it's already done.
That works, thank you.
Discussion about a grade 5 honor roll due to
So the
movement.
elementary schools are on a standards-based report card. They are not on a traditional numeric value report card. So running a honor roll GPA is not something right now that you can do because it's a standards-based report card. I have been asked, and I've directed Mr. O'Donnell to bring the report card committee back together again because there are questions and concerns on the entire elementary report card to look at what needs to be modified. So I believe that is a work in process, and if things change, then that may be something that can be looked at in the future.
Thank you. Library updates?
Continuing to work with the Scranton Library, elementary schools have already been there for their tours, and they will be pushing into the secondary schools. And with the paraprofessionals, again, we're trying to do an overview of all the paraprofessionals right now to see what can be done there. So I don't have an answer to that right now.
Was there anything else anybody wanted to ask? Okay, tentatively, depending on how the schedule goes, we'd like to have our next meeting in January. And that's all I have.
Okay, motion. Meeting concluded. We will now move to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting.
If everyone, BFM, I'm sorry, I think I wanted to jump right in.
That, you go right ahead and invite them, Pat, by all means.
BFM is presenting via Zoom, so if the board has received an invite in their email, if you wouldn't mind, if you can join the room and lower your volume, we should hear BFM's presentation, but we're doing like yeah. And the board should be joining the Zoom shortly.
Everybody's in?
Pat, where's the Zoom? No.
I'm gonna share my computer. I didn't get one, so I'm good.
Where is it? Okay, so I'm in there. Yep, I'm in there, and it says enter meeting info.
You should ask for your name on the right.
Yes.
That's just asking for your name.
Am I supposed to put my name in there?
Yes.
That's it?
Yeah, and then I think Jean will get it.
Okay.
There you go.
No, I got it. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think everyone was able to join up.
You got everybody.
Ian, I think everyone is logged in, you maybe not.
So we're turning our volume down?
When are you turning it up?
Todd, is this show, is it playing here or?
We can't all have our volume on ABK.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pat. Like,
Yours.
Right, just Ginny should be, the rest of us
Good
muted.
evening, everyone. My name is Ian Tyson, and I'm from Public Financial Management. It's great to see you all again this evening. We're here to present an update on the 5-year projections. In September, we came before the board at a previous Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and we presented a preliminary projection using the district's adopted 2024 budget with some adjustments, with some preliminary plans that have been discussed by the district's administration as they were heading into the budget development process for the coming calendar year. Since then, we've been working with Pat to receive new financial data and update those projections with the 2025 proposed budget. Here, I just included some highlights that are in that budget that have been discussed with the district and you all in previous discussions. But here there are a couple of notable changes that are happening next calendar year, including receiving the full impact of the funds from the Commonwealth, the final spend down of the ESSER funds, which has mostly taken place at the end of this year, and then new investments in staffing and programs through the second phase of the intermediate school teachers, meeting the needs of students, and then preliminary grant funding and staffing for pre-kindergarten classrooms. So these charts should be familiar for those of you who have seen our previous presentations. The pie chart on the left shows the district's revenues in the proposed 2025 budget, which totals about $225 million. About a third of the district's sources are coming from local taxes and other sources, with the majority of those coming from the real estate tax. The largest share of the district's funding comes from the Commonwealth, which provides 62%, or a little bit less than 2/3 of the district's budget. On the expenditure side of the equation, about 2/3 of the district's spending is for salaries and benefits, which covers the costs of staff in the district's buildings and the central office, everyone ranging from teachers to administrators, paraprofessionals, other support staff, and those in the central office as well. Now I'll quickly run through some of the assumptions that we have here in the projections, but many of them carry over from our presentation in September. On the local revenue side, we're still assuming a slight decrease in the district's assessed value going forward from 2025. Here we're using the assessment that was provided to the district in planning for next year's calendar year budget. We show the impact of the transition to the payroll preparation tax. And again, harkening back to our pie chart on the previous couple of slides, this is where the majority of the changes in the district's funding will come from. For state sources, for basic and special education funding, we're assuming continued increases to the statewide funding formula, $225 million for basic education funding, and a little over $46 million for special education funding. So these are essentially the increases that the district saw in formula-based funding carried forward into the future. We do not show any increases to the hold harmless line that was included in the 2024-5 budget. And for ready-to-learn block grant funding, we assume that the district receives its adequacy and tax equity supplements in 2024-5, and then no additional funds through those lines for the remainder of the projections. On the expenditure side, we're assuming that the district's contracts continue until the calendar year 2028, and then thereafter we show growth in each of the different bargaining units, assuming about a 1% increase for everyone. My apologies, I have a cold. For employee benefits, we're assuming that healthcare costs grow at 6% in projected years, which is based on the district's recent trends in spending. That enrollment stays at the 1,000 students in 2024-5, and then grows by 30 students per year in each of the future years. For debt service, we have the district's current debt schedule provided by Mike Vinn, the district's current financial advisor. This includes the borrowing, the $10 million bank loan that's being issued in the 2024 calendar year, as well as the planned borrowing for 2025. Thereafter, we assume that in 2027, the district takes on an additional $30 million of debt to continue capital projects and investments in the district's buildings. And then, similar to one of the scenarios that we showed in September for curriculum replacement, we assume that after 2024 and the expiration of the district's ESSER funds, that the district replaces future cycles of curriculum with general fund dollars, this beginning in 2027. Now, here's our baseline multi-year financial projection using the district's 2025 budget as the starting place. Here, this takes the district's budget with no adjustments and then adds those growth rates on the revenue and the expenditure side through the next 5 years. So on the local sources side, we assume no future tax increases and continued decrease in the district's tax base. we assumed historical increases in the formula-based funding for basic and special education, and then no additional ready-to-learn block grant funds after the 2024-5 calendar year. And then on the expenditure side, we assume historical growth in most of the district's spending categories. So here in 2026, we start off with a slight deficit after a balanced budget in 2025. Then in each of the years, that grows by about $3 to $6 million, depending on two major assumptions. One is the cycle of the curriculum replacement, and then the second is the borrowing impact. So that is one of the reasons, or both of those are the reasons why you see such a large jump in 2027, and then again in 2029. So this assumes no future tax increases and historical growth in state funding. And similar to our presentation in September, we included a box here showing the funding that would be required to balance the district's budget over the 5 years. And here, the district would need to receive one additional year of ready-to-learn block grant supplements. That would be the tax equity and adequacy supplements that you received in 2024-5, as well as 3.3% annual tax increases. So, bringing this all together, what does this mean for the district? This baseline projection is a very important tool that can be used by the administration and the board in planning for future years. It highlights areas of stress in the district's budget and lets you adjust some of those assumptions over time, so that way you can see them take effect and plan ahead to make sure that you have action steps so you can address any pressures before they become major problems in the district's finances. In the short term, we don't see any major pressure points in the district's budget. There's a slight minor negative result in 2026 without a tax increase. And then over time, without additional funding, the gap between the expenditures and the revenues grows. So without those additional revenue sources, the district would have to find other means to balance its budget. So just based on our analysis of the baseline projection, we assume that with some additional funds, whether that's through local tax increases further down the line, additional state funding as the state steps in and addresses the fair funding lawsuit and continues to make increases that you've seen over the last year, and then control in some of the budget categories that have seen some increased spending in recent years, we believe that the district could maintain its stable finances well into the future. So as our concluding slide, we leave you with some of the thoughts that we left in September, that in addition to planning for next year, there's several lenses that you could take to some of the investments that you're considering for next year. For those that are the highest priority, you could identify funding sources, whether that's this year or in future years to sustain them. You could defer investments until you have more certainty around the state's education budget, as the governor comes up with the proposal earlier in the calendar year, and then towards June as the legislature takes up the final proposal and enacts a budget. You could also phase in investments over time, similar to the district's approach with the restoration of the intermediate school schedule and the hiring of those teachers. Or you could take a look at the available funds that you have and determine which investments you do or do not want to take in the future or the near future. So with that brings me to the end of our presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Ian, thank you very much, and I hope you feel better. Oh. Ian, I hope you can hear me. This is Katie. There's a little bit of an echo, but thank you very much, and I
believe I could hear Director Gilmartin, and then it went to mute again, I think under Pat's name.
Tell him I said he hopes I hope he feels better. Pat.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Any other questions?
Pat, I do have two questions here. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get muted so this doesn't echo. That's not working. Yes. Just get out of there. It's because Pat can get out. Oh. Okay. Sorry. Pat, thank you. The $30 million assumed in 2027, in touched on the debt service obligations. What is that number?
What is
Is
the-
that knowable? Like when you talk about borrowing $30 million? I guess my question is, if we're living in a $30 million home, what would my mortgage payment be?
Certainly, we can provide that. It's included in the district's debt service schedule. Obviously, that 30 consists of the 10 million that we will be closing on in December of 2024, plus an additional, assumed to be 20 borrowed in 2025. We can provide that information for you.
And when we note 3.3% tax increases beginning in 2026, because we are looking at the 2025 budget, is that meaning 1 year from now, we'll be looking at potential increases going into the 2026? Or when we go through this process in 2026, we'll be looking at them for 2027?
I believe it's beginning in 2026. As Ian showed, it was a very slight deficit in 2026, only about $400,000. But to balance over the next 5 years would require the Ready to Learn supplement and a tax increase of 3.3% starting in 2026.
So, a year from now.
Correct.
And that is not part of the assumption, I don't have that right in front of me, but where we get to $30 million at the end of this timeline here. Does that assume a 3.3% increase and going forward, or is that if we do absolutely nothing?
This is if we do absolutely nothing. To change these red numbers to black balance, it's 3.3 million beginning in 2026 and the Ready to Learn supplement.
Pat, is this correct? This is figured out without any additional revenue. We all know that we are looking to receive additional revenue per the lawsuit that was settled. So this is basically done without those numbers because we have nothing to project. So this could potentially change within an instant. Because that has already been settled. We just don't know what we're getting.
These projections are based off of the foundation of what the 2025 assumed, which is maintaining our additional funding in Ready to Learn Block Grant, but no compounding or additional funds to the Ready to Learn Block Grant, and the same funding sources that we received in basic education and special education funding this year, the $225 million added to a formula for PEF, and approximately $50 million or $46 million added to a formula for special education funding. That's correct.
So it's looking at, I always say put it in non-accountant terms, it's looking at, we got a one-time investment in funds, and we're not gonna see that again, just keep that money in the Ready to Learn block. So some of what Pat's gonna go into when he goes through his budget is that we're gonna hold a little bit until we see in February what the proposed preliminary state budget is when the governor addresses the state.
Any other questions on Ian's presentation? And Pat?
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Ian. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
We're getting off soon now, right?
Yes.
I can run this off.
Move on to the next one.
Yes, please.
So the next item on the agenda is proposed final budget updates. At your desk is a one-pager here that if you can please reference with the blue header. So just reviewing this here in front of you, as that the top row there is obviously what the board had approved as a proposed final on November 4th. We assumed a beginning fund balance of about $20 million. This will be updated for final adoption for budget submission purposes, but it included revenues of $226 million, expenses less the budgetary reserve. These are the true expenses in the budget of approximately $222 million. An ending fund balance, if everything was to be come in perfectly, we'd end our fund balance with $24 million, and that budgetary reserve is what's currently built in of $4.1 million. Okay?
Pat, can you do me a favor speaking to the mic? People at home who are watching say they can't hear you.
Okay, thank you. So the top line represents what was previously approved by the board. Again, a $225 million revenues, expenses of $221 million, and a budgetary reserve of $4.1 million. What we're making some adjustments on here this evening is, as we reviewed, we did add some positions to the budget. One is more of being a proactive measure to prepare ourselves if this were to happen next school year. So we added an additional 8 full-time equivalents for professional and paraprofessional staff related to autistic support. Being that these positions are merely a reserve for if our numbers continue to climb, what we're proposing is to pull them out of the salary and benefits line items and shift that funding into the budgetary reserve. So you're looking at, in the expense column, a reduction of salaries by about $635,000. Our FICA taxes about $48,000. And a reduction in our PSER expense by about $218,000. When you reduce your PSERs and your FICA expenditures, you also have a reduction in revenues. So obviously the state reimburses the districts approximately 72% of our pension and FICA obligations. So we're reducing revenues by $35,000 and $157,000 for PSERs. Additionally, as I just mentioned before, we recently priced and will be closing on our 2024 Cs for capital improvements. With the updated debt service schedule, we need to make an adjustment to what was presented by about $57,000. So in total, we're adjusting revenues down by $191,977 to a total of $225,671. $225,671,321, and we're adjusting expenses down by $844,986 to $220,882,649, and we're increasing our budgetary reserve to $4,788,672. Again, those adjustments are, the 8 full-time equivalent for autistic support is us being proactive to hopefully, have some budgetary reserve available if our numbers continue to climb. Kind of piggybacking off what Ian just mentioned, possibly how can the district balance, possibly like deferring some of our investments. Well, some of our investments were certainly in the salaries and benefits category. So in the presentation, there was many positions added to the budget. Some of them we feel we would like to move forward with, upon adoption for the start of the new year. One of them would be some ELD supports for our growing ELD student populations. The staff related to our mental health supports, such as our school counselors to replace our social workers, to replace the SBVH programs. And obviously, we've already begun moving forward with the middle school vice principal. Some of the other positions that are included in, Dr. Keating and I would recommend that we wait and see kind of what happens with the governor's proposed budget come February and into the spring before moving forward with some of those. We would like to leave them in the line items for salary and benefits, not move them to the budgetary reserve, but it would be our plan to kind of wait and see what kind of is proposed for us come the 25-26 proposed budget by the governor.
Thank you. Are there any questions on those changes?
Pat, I know this is probably a question more for Mr. Wolf. How many current positions do we have budgeted right now for that are unfulfilled? For instance, do we have potentially looking at filling an additional 80 positions by the end of the year? Or that we had scheduled for the beginning of the year that we already budgeted for? Well, I think you and I have had this conversation before,
I will
Tom.
get you that answer of how many unfilled positions there are. It'll be in the weekly packet.
Right, because what we had spoke about previously is that we will budget, hypothetically, for 80 positions, and that will be built into the budget. We will only fill 30 of those, leaving those 50 unfulfilled that we already budgeted, and that money will come back to us, correct? That will be our money that we did not spend, correct?
I would think, yes, if a position is budgeted and remains unfilled,
and that happens every year.
Yeah, it happens every year. What happens most of the time for those is there would be maybe a permanent sub or a long-term sub placement for that position, depending on what the position is. But there certainly could be budgetary savings based on the rate for what we budgeted for the position, less what a permanent sub or long-term sub.
I think if you could put something in the packet just where it shows us what the number was at the beginning of the year versus where we end up at the year and there's potential cost savings, that would be good information for us to know.
Pat, over the last couple of weeks, I've just been listening to different people, and I'm getting the impression that we have an absentee problem with our employees.
You're seeing more people take time that you may not have seen in time previous to COVID. So for me to sit up here and go with 100% accuracy, our attendance rate has grown by such and such a percent, I can't give you those numbers. I can get you those numbers, and I would do that for you. People, there is higher levels of absenteeism. We see it in some units more than other units than we've seen in the past. What I will say, and I'm saying this without fact or research behind it, is this is a societal issue, not a Scranton School District issue. You hear it when we speak to people in business and industry in a lot of other areas, that staffing is still an issue and attendance is still an issue. So we can get you probably like a 5-year look back, right, with the CSIU system. I may not have that for this week's packet, but I could get it for the following week's packet. But yes, I believe after the pandemic, you've seen a switch in how people take their time. It's also generational.
Just to be clear, we're talking about staff, not students.
Yes, staff. Yes, us, staff. Oh, I can do that for you.
Thank you.
Anything else on the proposed final budget updates? And we will move on to the overview of federally funded programs. Director Chesak had put together a very good email with some questions about the potential implications of changes at the federal level. So Pat is going to walk us through that in a broad way, and then if we have any specific questions, I also ask that we wrap our head around. I'll just move to the next, and then we can jump back, the state education funding sources, because I myself don't have a good understanding of from where all of those dollars flow. Obviously, much of it is state revenue, but I have to imagine that there are some buckets that come from the federal government through the state and to our district.
So before Pat goes into his presentation, here's my 3-minute lecture on because there's a lot of talk about the collapse of the Department of Education. So under the Department of Education, when it comes to K-12 education, there are major pieces of legislation that have been passed where funding is linked. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which we in our lifetime know as the reauthorizations called No Child Left Behind and the Every Student Succeeds Act, is the first major piece of federal legislation. IDEA, or the Individuals with Disability Education Act, would be the act protecting our exceptional children. Those are the two major pieces of legislation. You also have Perkins. Now, we're not directly affected by Perkins because Perkins is tied to your CTCs. The other area where you see federal implications is through the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program. So that's another area of pass-through to the states. And then finally, you have Medicare and Medicaid access reimbursement, but that is not through the Department of Education. That is through the Department of Health and Human Services. So even though those entities are overseen by the Department of Education, those are federal pieces of legislation. Those pieces of legislation would require an act of Congress to be disbanded or taken apart. What has been talked about is how the funding, now your titles fall under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, is how you would access that funding could be changed. So Pat's going to go through our specific numbers, but there's my 5-second government lesson on education. The rest of it is controlled at a state level at this time, and we do have a robust Department of Education in the state of Pennsylvania. So those are your major pockets of funding that you see and what is federally implicated at K-12 schools.
Aaron, one quick question. And I don't know if right now is the time or place, but What's going to happen if the Department of Ed on a federal level is,
It's why it's why I just kind of went through my mini lesson. Whether the department itself is there, Carter passed the department, so the department started during his administration or not. It was under a different department before that. Those are the governing pieces of legislation that we abide by through the state regulations. So, for example, IDEA is Chapter 14 of the Pennsylvania State Standards of our regs. So those then come into the state regs that we have, and they're enacted at the state level. So again, what I'm saying is, whatever the entity is, those pieces of legislation would need an act of Congress, and I'm not a social studies teacher, for the record, to be overturned or to be taken away. Hope that makes sense.
so in other words, for us to lose money, Congress has to act on it?
No, because what I was saying was they could change how you access federal dollars. Right now, the title monies are set up in a specific structure, so that could change. IDEA is a pass-through. It comes through our NEIUs and passes through to us. So IDEA covers our exceptional population. There's a birth to 5 part, and then there's the school age part. So again, they would have to modify those pieces of law, and they're pieces of law. They're not. It's like it would require a full act of Congress to change those pieces of law. So I just wanted to let everyone know, like, what actually funnels down to us and is impacting the everyday movements of what's going on. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act becomes the Chapter 4 test standards and the PSSA and Keystone testing. That's how Pennsylvania enacted it. IDEA becomes Chapter 14 and the Pennsylvania state regulations. So there are, that they pass down into what we have in Pennsylvania. By no means, I'm just giving you the 5-second, for those of you who aren't a teacher, Tom, I'm sure you sat through this, Marie, somewhere in college, the 5-second educational overview.
Okay.
Okay, so next we'll go through the handout in front of you. It's about 5 pages or so, front and back. So just on the inside of page 1, which is numbered page 2 at the bottom, we'll focus primarily on our title grants. Obviously, the district has received federal funds through the ESSER and ARP ESSER funding in prior years. We will not be discussing that in here. The only funding in the 2025 budget for ESSER is some carryover funds, as we previously discussed. But on page 2, it gives a breakdown that the district receives Title I, Title I Part D, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. And there's a brief description of what the purpose and uses are allowable for each grant. Moving on to page 3 at the top, we provided a 5-year comparison of all title grants in total received. And you'll see that back in 2021, the district was receiving approximately $6 million in all titles, titles 1 through 4. And currently right now in 24-25, our funding is over $7.7 million, so $7,727,391. So we've seen a steady increase in our funding over the last few budget cycles. At the bottom of page 3, here's a pie chart of each title grant in total. So we receive approximately $6.4 million for Title I. We'll go smallest to largest. $533,000 in Title II, $494,000 in Title IV, approximately $220,000 in Title III, which comes in 2 parts, and approximately $32,000 in Title I Part B. Just moving on to page 4, you'll see that from a function breakdown, the largest allocation of what we spend our title dollars on is for the federally funded regular programs. You'll see that's $5.2 million. It's followed by the 2,100 support services for students. That's some of the intermediate school guidance counselors. We also, we look at the 2850s being the 3rd largest at $440,000. That's the cost related to our federal and Title I department at the central level. The top line there is the 5,000s. $267,000. That's an indirect cost rate. So that's a fee that the district takes from the grant for administering and running the various title programs. And then you'll see all the other categories of functions that we allocate some of our title budgets towards. Moving down to the bottom of page 4, we have our funding, and now it's broken out by object. So obviously, as you can see, the largest share of it, much like our general fund budget, is related to the salary and benefits of the staff that's funded with our title dollars, of approximately 6.5 million of the total. Okay. Moving on to page 5, our current allocation for Title I this year is $6,448,000. Again, much like all of our title grants, the largest share of this is going towards the salary and benefits of the staff that are funded with this. You'll see just in the brief description of each object what exactly we're funding with these. We'll focus just on salary and benefits for this conversation, but feel free to review the other object codes as well. Again, these are the salary and benefits of our reading and math specialists and interventionists, some intermediate school counselors, our federal programs department. We cost partial salaries of our Title I program manager, our EL program manager, a staff accountant in the federal programs office, a clerk in that department, and obviously the director of curriculum and instruction as well. Again, we do utilize the purchase services of the 300s, the 500s as well for a set aside for homeless and foster transportation. Your 600s are your supplies for your Title I school building budgets and to run their parent-family engagements. And again, as I mentioned before, the indirect cost rate that we have been fortunate enough to utilize over the last few years, we've applied for it through PDE and are able to take a share of the funding to offset any of the indirect costs that we incur to run and manage the program. Moving on to page 6, which is Title I Part D, approximately $32,000. You'll see it's not a large grant, but we do have some extended after-school learning activities and obviously the supplemental materials that we use to purchase supplies for students in the delinquent institutions. Page 7 is Title II, total $533,000. The largest share of that is to fund the salary and benefits for 4 class size reduction teachers and any staff development activities outside of our contractual school day. You'll see at a lot of our meetings, or every meeting, we approve permission to attend. Many times, this is the funding source that you'll see on those individual applications. So any of the professional development for our staff can be funded and is funded with this funding source. Jumping over to page 8 is Title III. Total is $220,000. Again, the largest share of that, of almost $170,000, is the salaries and benefits for our language guides, our diversity coordinator, and some professional development that happens outside the school day, and our ELD parent and family engagement evenings. Jumping over to page 9, our last title grant is Title IV, $494,000. Again, the common theme is we spend the majority of our grants on the salary and benefits of our staff. We're funding the salary and benefits of 2 college paraprofessionals, 2 crisis counselors, 1 youth enrichment director, and we pay for some school-wide positive behavior programs and events out of this as well at the building level. As Dr. Keating noted, there's also some other funding sources that are federal. IDEA, our allocation this year is $2.4 million. It is a pass-through from the NEIU. We fund currently the salary and benefits of approximately 30 special education teachers out of that funding source, and then the Medicaid access. This number, as you heard me, I believe, present back in October, this number is increased. We have increased what we're going to draw down from this, but for calendar year budget 2025, we estimate approximately drawing down about $1.8 million. Again, it is a federal source, and we've used this over the years to fund salary and benefits of professional paraprofessional, and I should add support. There is one clerk that is also funded out of the special education department with this funding source as well. Be happy to answer any questions on the federal funding allocations in our budget.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Laffey, Director Gilmartin, and Dr. Keating, for acknowledging the questions that I sent in my email about 2 weeks ago, and also Mr. Laffey for creating this overview. It was very helpful, so thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, I just think it's important to have a grasp of what the federal funding does look like. If I'm doing quick math here correctly, I'm coming up with close to $12 million.
Yeah,
Does that sound about right?
yep.
So, to tax our way out of that at a local level is not realistic.
Correct.
So, I think we want to be very cautious to be monitoring all of this and not speculating and reacting to things that haven't happened, but we certainly want to convey that we are keeping an eye on all of this. Before you move on, Pat, just so I don't forget, I don't know if all of you are signed up for the education voters email list. If not, I can forward that along. It's Susan Spica's, if I have this correct, I believe that is her day job, and the presentation she was coming to do about fair funding is more of a sideline. But I have found that this group puts together very comprehensive and clear information. Certainly they are on the side of supporting a public education, if you can even call that a side. We should all be on it. But I think they offer very measured and fact-based information. And they just sent an email yesterday with a link to a memo from another group that really did a deep dive into some of these issues. So if you don't get that, I'm happy to send the link along.
If you could forward that to me, that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Pat, yes, very appreciative giving these numbers. It's very interesting to see it broken down like that and just see where the money goes to, and it'd be doomsday if we lost that funding. So, we definitely can't lose that. But it's great that you put that together so we can have a good comprehension of it, and hopefully we won't have to prepare for the worst. But
Yeah, and let me just say that, again, this is the federal funding that affects our general fund. I'd be remiss to not mention the National School Lunch Program. Is also a very large federal funding source for us as well.
Yeah.
And that provides us the funding to run our CEP program, which provides free lunch and breakfast to all students in the district.
yeah, that's something that's very important that we have to make sure we get the funding for and keep. So thanks for pointing that out.
What would the results be if we lost the free lunch program? Like, I get that would be beyond us, but what happens there? Because
I don't even want to know.
Talks locally even of not having that program. So, like, what would that mean for us and our students?
Go back to how I was as a kid. That if
You either afford it or you don't.
We don't collect income information. Smaller districts still do because they're not the community eligibility programs. Larger districts that fall under the community eligibility program don't require that paperwork. But I mean, it would be, and there's a lot of districts around here who do it. We still send the paperwork home on the first day of school, and you have to fill it out to show if you meet federal guidelines. And then there would be remember there used to be free lunch, reduced lunch, and full paid lunch? You kind of end up going back probably to a system like that. I have no proof.
Yeah.
So would there still be reduced lunch with that?
Well, with the CEP program, everybody's free right now. But yeah, there's still schools who don't fall under the community eligibility program who have that.
It's scary to think about. I mean, remember during COVID, making sure we got our students meals, because some of these meals are probably the only ones they rely on. So I'm praying to God that it stays the way it is and doesn't change.
It's Maslow 101. You have to meet somebody's basic needs before they can be good. I won't lie to you all right now. I'm a little cranky because it's 19,000 degrees up here.
Right there with you. Right there with
It is a little warm. Rob. Aaron thinks. Turn them down. We don't need the colored lights on, do we?
They need to fall asleep.
Well, some of them, I mean.
Just the last, the last item on the agenda, I believe, is the state education funding sources. we did reach out directly to BEP. They responded basically just related to PE, but let's assume it's special education as well. That basic education funding is a state appropriation that's enacted and funded by Pennsylvania. The U.S. Department of Education does not have any part in the administration or funding of PEF, which obviously PEF is our largest state source. I will note that meeting with PFM as well, we did look at the Ready-to-Learn block grant because obviously that's a very important one for us with the increase that we've received. That is also funded through state appropriations.
I think turning the lights out during this conversation was very effective. Thank you.
You sure it wasn't last call?
It's easier.
How could you not turn off the red, white, and blue ones? I used to do it back in high school. I'm cool with it.
You want to go back?
Anything else for the Budget and Finance Committee?
Again.
We will be bringing that budget to you for a vote on December 9th.
I think you made it brighter.
And President Holmes, I relinquish the meeting to you.
Okay, we will now move to the work session agenda for November 25th. Roll call.
You had that printed?
Mr. Borthwick? Here. Mr. Casey?
Here.
Mrs. Chesak?
Present.
Ms. Fox?
Present.
Ms. Martin?
Present.
Ms. Merkel? Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mrs. Yanni?
Present.
Mr. Holmes?
Present.
Nine present.
Budget and Finance.
Okay, under Budget and Finance, we will have motions to approve the bill list and exception bill list, motion to approve delinquent tax reports, motion to approve the treasurer's reports, motion to approve repository sales, motion to approve budget transfers, motion to approve disposal of assets, all under consent agenda. And Mr. Laffey, I know we've talked about this before, but would it be possible, I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, the legal bills that are in the drive are the ones that we have approved. I'm not getting that wrong, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's what's been processed for payment to make it to the monthly board list.
Right.
And then the board votes on it the following month.
Is it, and this may be also a question for Attorney Freund or someone in his office, is it possible to get those by the work session rather than going into the voting meeting?
I mean, certainly, we'll have to work with our, internal administrative team that reviews and signs off on the legal bills.
Okay.
It's something that Dr. Keegan and I can put on our next staff meeting to talk about the timeliness of making sure that the board is.
If that's something that could be discussed, because Director Yanni and I think, were reading each other's minds last month and had similar concerns and erred on the side of caution not to approve before we were able to clarify that the information that concerned us was in fact in there. We also talked at one point about making those searchable, and I know that might be complicated in order to protect them,
Yeah.
But if that's something that can be discussed again, that might be helpful.
Okay. I know that I have an Adobe software that does allow me to convert things to a searchable document. I'm not sure how that works when they're uploaded into a Google Drive.
Because I know we don't have the option to download them, which I think is as it should be. But because I was trying to figure out if I had that too.
So we had changed just what, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that because a lot of times you weren't getting them over the weekend. So we had put a timeline in, and as my confidential entity was going to help us so that we needed to redact it back in a timely fashion. So we would have to make sure that they could get us those bills like the Wednesday before.
Right.
So that the preliminary redaction could happen for departments. So then Peggy could do another redaction before they're uploaded. So it would be like the Wednesday, it would be actually 2 weeks prior. I don't know if they'd be as current.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Because we'd have to do a hard cutoff date then, that they would come in to us. you'd be 2 weeks behind from what you're getting now.
And
See, I thought, like, is this how it always was? Because I thought at one point they weren't as up to date as they are now. Or is that not? Like, the bills that we're going to get between now and whenever we get them.
They're as up to date as departments can review them and sign off on the process. If an individual department takes longer than, I don't know, a few days to do it, then yeah, some could appear older in terms of versus when the services were rendered versus when the bills are being presented, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, because I thought.
Bills are sent by the firm on a monthly basis, but then they get disseminated to the various departments that need to sign off that the services or the fees incurred are valid.
Okay, because I know we don't have access to the previous legal drive anymore, but I thought, like, offhand, like, so now is November, and I thought it used to be, and this is just trying to remember from when I was clicking on things all the time, that it used to be for, like, September and October, but we were approving it in November. Or, like, it was a few months back. Maybe not September, but is that it? September and October? Okay.
Yeah, that would
like a few months prior to the one that we were voting, because I remember when I was trying to find something or line it up, it was for 2 months, not, like, very recent, but if that's, okay.
And just to kind of build on that, I would really like to see or figure out a way we could group together the bills so that I can follow them a little bit better. I wasn't comfortable voting yes at the last board meeting because there was information I was looking for that I didn't think we should have incurred expenses on, and it wasn't all grouped together. So how can we do that? Like, I think it goes back to what Director Martin said. Or can they be searchable? Can they be grouped together?
I think we could work with our team. I'm going to go off the top of my head. We have general legal bills, right? That would be your solicitor.
Right.
We have anything personnel related. You have tax, and then special ed, and then litigation.
Okay.
We may be able, instead of scanning them as one packet, scan them as 4 or 5 packets based off of that. Is that something?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem if we're not, I mean, I guess that would be up to all my colleagues, if we're not approving them as timely, even if they're searchable and grouped together. That's kind of what I'm looking for.
I think so, and I think, Tara, you're on the same wavelength here. I would want to understand what is feasible and then make sure everybody is comfortable with it if it adjusts the timeline of the information and when we're approving.
So we have a staff meeting tomorrow where we can start the conversation, but our legal meetings are usually Thursday, which is Thanksgiving. So we won't have a legal meeting again until the following Thursday. So this may not be in this packet.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
But the legal bills that we see are provided by, in the format that they are provided by John's office, correct? So it seems as
Well, no,
though.
in the format that they are, that's provided by accounts payable. Like accounts payable, after processing or preparing the bills for payment, will then combine them and scan them into a PDF, and then I upload them into the shared document. So John's firm doesn't upload them into the shared.
No, but the document itself is
Oh,
what's
yes,
coming from him.
yes.
Our staff redact them, approve them, and then they come to us. So if there was a true formatting type of conversation, that would probably start in John's office.
And that's, yes, so our next legal meeting will be the 5th of December. So I'll email Peggy now and have this concept put on that agenda.
Okay. Yeah, I think just the issue at hand was being able to review them prior to the work session. So if we have any questions or concerns, obviously within a capacity of what you could speak about publicly, they could be spoken about prior to the voting meeting. I mean, I don't think we would see a difference if they were 2 weeks behind. I mean, that's just my thoughts of, I don't, I never looked at the timeline, I think, per se, so closely of more of what's in there, what am I approving. So as long as, I think that would be a conversation that we could all have, but I think that would be fine.
want to make sure that I'm clear. This was not a question of a billing practice, of anything being wrong or inappropriate on the bill. This was just the matter at hand.
No, I think what would help me if we could have in a really broad sense an idea of how decisions are made to incur some of these legal expenses. For instance, we had investigations listed on our legal bills. So I was trying to add up the totals for an invoice titled Investigation Number 2. And then there's charges on there for an investigation number 3. So I want to be able to take a look at this and understand the total that was spent on an individual investigation. So for the legal bills coming up on the next voting meeting, are there investigation number 3 bills in there?
I'd have to review what we've received thus far.
So would you want to pull that off the consent agenda at this time, just in case there's questions?
Yes, yeah, that's a good idea. And then if I could just get a broad idea how decisions are made to incur legal fees for investigations.
Well, that's usually at my discretion.
Okay.
With the consultation of the solicitor, that's at my discretion with the consultation of the solicitor if we believe that it's something that has a sensitivity to it that can't be internally done by a staff member.
Okay.
We're going to utilize their services. And it's under the guise and the advice of the solicitor.
Okay.
Not an arbitrary decision.
So I guess my question would be then, how should that information be reported to the board at the time? Or should it not?
It depends on if I can talk. I can't carte blanche say that, because if there's something criminal in nature, I may not be able to share that with you. If it's something maybe HR related, I may be able to give you a general overview of it, but can't give you detailed information on it. So it's going to kind of be a case-to-case situation, depending on the parameters around it. And usually, I will say to John, can I share this or not? And he'll tell me no. So or yes. And I'll give you a general example. If the district receives a subpoena of any kind, I cannot share that information.
Okay.
And I may need to do an investigation based off that subpoena coming in. So I can never tell you that.
Okay.
And I may need their help.
Right. So an investigation into an elected official, is that something that should be shared with the full board? I guess
Depends on if there's
up to Attorney Freund, I guess that's my question.
It depends on if there's an HR component to it, correct?
Yeah, I think that's the primary concern. Is if that investigation involves personnel, then confidential. Treated
Tara,
as-
are you speaking about my investigations?
Yes.
You're more than welcome to have them.
To what? I'm sorry.
You're more than welcome to have them.
Well, and that's one of my concerns, is I understand the employee confidentiality component. Absolutely, I would think that could be redacted. But we're incurring legal bills for these investigations. And Director Casey, I'm not saying they should have even occurred. I wasn't aware
Tara,
that they occurred.
I agree. They shouldn't. Matter of fact,
I'm not disagreeing with you, and I'm not bringing it up to point that out. What I'm pointing out is we're not being transparent with the public. We're not being transparent with how taxpayer dollars are being spent.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'd like them to be made public because on all of them, I was exonerated. Matter of fact, I have a question and I keep being told, you can't ask this question. Where in the complaint, the one complainant,
Just for everyone's protection, employees are involved. I would not discuss this. That is why executive sessions happen, so that legal issues can be discussed. You tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right. I think that, we don't want to get into a situation where information is shared that becomes identifiable, so.
Sure, I get that.
I mean, I think Director Yanni was trying to avoid.
Right, yeah, no, I
Anything
wasn't bringing that up.
identifiable.
No, I wasn't bringing any of that up.
I think if I can just help put this together really quick, you're saying, you put your piece in, and you were no one said what this was about, I understand. But the problem that's coming at hand here is there's things that are not talked about publicly, but there's people who are talking about them publicly, and then people are being questioned. So I think that nothing is said publicly towards the legal bills and things like that, and then directors are being questioned about them, and then they were never spoken about on the floor. So I think the question at hand is, to clarify the process for the public of, okay, some people know it's out there now, how did this happen? It was approved by the superintendent or such at the time, and these were bills that were paid. And that's just the public conversation of it.
Matter of fact, the first investigation, I remember, the board was only directed to pay only $1,500 on it. But as far as I'm concerned, any member of this board who wants a copy of any of those investigations, as far as I'm concerned, you're more than welcome to have it. I'm not hiding anything. It was all done by an independent investigator, and it wasn't done by the superintendent. It wasn't done by Pat Laffey. It was done by somebody who was independent.
Right, and those are the charges that we
Right.
heard. So
And
that's
what
what I'm
I'm
trying to
saying is,
understand.
I did absolutely nothing wrong, and
I-
no, I've been going around, and I've been getting by one department a group of people that maybe I'm asking too many questions. I don't know. I mean, I'm at the point where I can't even walk into a school, and certain people who would love to come and investigate me. Matter of fact, I'll tell you what. Last year around this time.
John, we can't have these
No,
conversations
you know
publicly.
what? I always get cut off, and I
can't-
never
I
get a
don't
chance
think he's
to.
disclosing anything that's
What the
confidential.
solicitor is saying.
I'm telling you, if you want them, you may have them. I'm not hiding anything.
Okay, I think then
The
the.
solicitor's telling us now, so I'm
Absolutely.
following.
Okay,
Right now, the
absolutely.
solicitor's saying stop and go.
Absolutely, okay.
It doesn't matter where someone starts to say, what if you accidentally say something in a process
Okay.
that leads to the identity
The
of
only
a
thing
person?
for
I
the
think-
record that I do, I'm sorry, Director Ernie, is that in some of these situations, if it is appealed, the board also becomes the judiciary board. So you, and that's a hearing process. So having having me in an executive session say, hey, we investigated Pat Laffey, we did not, and that's gonna come to you, then I'm tainting that case.
Okay.
Tara,
Then,
just so
then
that
I just want to say one other thing. I think it might be helpful then, and I did suggest this to Director Holmes, that we as a board have a very broad discussion of the principles of governance and leadership so that we could discuss all of this in a really transparent way with the public, just
Tara.
like Director Fox said. So I'm going to restate my interest and my request to Director Holmes. I know that he vehemently denied that request, stating that I was going to be finger pointing and
No, I didn't say you
acting
were gonna be
negatively.
I
No,
didn't
that's
say
what you
you were
put. I would be finger pointing. And I guess one of the things I've always remembered is assume positive intent, and that's what I've tried to
With
do.
you, I don't, because you do like to call out. What I said is
With-
that I
with-
would
with
not.
me, you don't?
Excuse me, I'm speaking. What I said
I
is
don't think I
that,
have to sit here and listen to you say with
You
me
don't.
you don't.
what I'm saying again is I didn't want anyone to finger point. So what you saw was a cut and paste email that went out. And I made it clear to you that that was an email sent out because what I didn't want was this conversation to happen where we would get into this. So it's attempts, because we have people who sometimes forget that they're professionals and act childish and try to goad others. What I'm trying to avoid is us embarrassing ourselves and having these conversations. I made it very clear that everyone has access to that document all year long, correct? We can have this conversation in executive session. I believe certain people want to have it publicly to call others out, to go to others. I'm trying to avoid that because that doesn't serve the people we serve properly. And when a superintendent can call for an investigation, again, under $5,000, she doesn't need board permission. And again, when the solicitor tells me to stop, I don't listen to Director Yanni, I listen to the solicitor. So I was telling you to stop because I felt as though you were going there and potentially we could avail someone's personal information that does not need to get out, thus causing ourselves to be in a lawsuit. because that is a smart thing to do.
And I was discussing things very broadly.
But
And-
there was
and-
other people speaking, and it could potentially
Kara.
lead to something else.
Sure.
Kara, from my point of view, if you can't get them from the district, I'll try to find them if I didn't throw them out. I'll be more than happy to give anybody on the board a copy of them. And just so that you're aware, on the second complaint, I have an attorney already on file to file a lawsuit against the people who filed against me for the main reason there's discrepancies between the complaint and the investigation. But what I'm saying.
Okay, so the only thing that I
I'd
want
like
to
to do
clarify
a
at this-
motion to recess for 5 minutes.
I second.
I said my piece.
Yeah, well,
You're more than welcome.
I
And
do
by
think
the
you
way,
should follow
I
your own
also
advice, Director
submitted
Holmes, when
bills.
posting on social media as
Kara,
well.
I also submitted bills.
I think your incendiary
of
remarks
over
on social media
$1,000
should
to
definitely be
paid,
discussed publicly.
And it was refused. And
Excuse
just
me,
so
Director
that-
Borthwick? You are cursing up here. Wow.
Motion to recess.
Wow. And you've said it 3 times since I've been sitting here this evening. If you can't act professional, what is that? I should grow up? We're having a very professional conversation.
We're taking a 5-second, 5-minute break. Recess now. you need to call?
No, just for the record, everyone's returned after the recess and 9 are present.
I said, Bob's just not back yet. He'll be back momentarily.
We're going to note that one is missing right now from the recess, please.
Yep,
Thank you.
I'll make a note of that.
Budget and Finance, please continue.
And we are removing the bill list and the exception bill list from the consent agenda. We will have a motion to approve the 2025 general fund budget as reviewed at our earlier meeting. And discussion or motion for real estate assessment approvals?
Yeah, I do not have anything at this time. However, obviously, our voting meeting is December 9th, so we have a couple weeks on that.
And do we have any contract updates?
Not at this time.
Am I okay? Community relations?
Relations.
Okay. We'll have a motion to approve donations. PS Bank to Neil Armstrong Elementary and West High Pride Team to West Scranton High School. Was that in the packet? Why is West High Pride Team to West Scranton High School? Is that, what are they donating?
They're donating decorations. I don't know if it's teachers that are bringing in decorations for deck the halls. So there wasn't any monetary amount on there, but
Okay.
I'm not sure that we even need to have it on there, but just to cover myself, I did.
I think anyone have any questions? We're okay?
Education.
Motion to approve permissions to attend meetings and conferences. Motion to approve out-of-state field trips. And if necessary, a motion to approve special ed settlements.
There are special ed settlements, 4, correct, Dan? 2, I'm sorry.
We'll do those after. Operations.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the 2025 Health and Safety Plan. There are no changes.
No, and just so you know, this will be the last approval of that, but Pat and I looked it up, and you have to keep it active until all of ESSERS is exhausted. So this should be the last approval of that.
Yeah, since we're carrying over funds in 25, we thought it was prudent to update.
Are we adding this feasibility study and cost analysis for the gym?
Yes. That was, you said it.
Okay.
It's going to be done. It's going to be done by December.
No, it's
To approve the bill. Personnel.
All right, so on the non-consent agenda, we have a motion to approve the personnel report, and then we have a discussion/motion for crossing guard compensation.
Policy.
Are we having a,
Yeah, regarding the crossing guard compensation, do we have an update on that, Pat, or?
Yes, I'll provide more information in the packet. I did want to speak to Attorney Gilbride one more time. However, we've been in touch. He believes that City Council is possibly or is encouraged to look at updating this compensation. I will have more information in the board packet. I will say that the City of Scranton administration had some other requests related to the management and administration of the crossing guard program. However, we're not there just yet, but we still feel that we can possibly move forward with updating the compensation for the crossing guards while that other discussion is still ongoing.
All right.
so for next meeting, we will be approving crossing guard compensation?
You'll be presented with an option to approve. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, yes. Okay, thank you.
And that will be in the packet prior.
Yep. I'll get it. It'll be in this week, and I wanted to touch base with Attorney Gilbride one more time.
Okay.
Okay, policy, we will have a motion to approve first read updates, revisions, 005, organization, 308, employment contract board resolution, 253, SSD update, gender identity and expression, 823, opioid antagonist, it's a new title. I would like to provide a brief overview as policy chair with policy 005. It was asked to be included on this agenda. Several months ago, policy 005 was revised to state a board member is ineligible for reappointment as committee chair of the same committee upon the expiration of their one-year term. This revision was passed with a majority vote. I received 2 emails recently from 2 different directors about this policy. One email stated that some directors might not be expecting to hand over the reins of their committees and would like this clarified to possibly reconsider. Based on that, I moved forward with adding it to the agenda. a little bit of background here. When the revision was adopted, I stated it was a way just for all directors to remain equal, and I still feel the same. I'm still opposed to a director sitting as a chair of a committee indefinitely, as we are all equally elected. We represent the entire Scranton community, not just those under a certain committee. We were elected to represent the people, as my friend Mayor Connors would say. When certain directors feel that they are entitled to remain as chair over other equally elected directors, it gives the appearance that those directors are more important than their board colleagues. So just to help balance everything and remain equal, that's where this whole revision came from. And like I said, it was passed several months ago. I still remain in support of this revision. But as asked by my board colleagues, it's back up for discussion for a possible revision again.
I think this was also added because there's a PSBA component to it.
Yes.
Jenny?
So Danielle, just for clarification, is this is only for all the reasons you just stated, this is only for committee chairs, not for board leadership?
I believe when it was passed, it was just for the board or the committee chairs.
Okay, so in policy, it only reflects the committee chairs, not board leadership?
Correct.
Okay.
Say by school code, any chairman or any board official can be removed with 5 members of the board?
Well, no, you're not exactly correct. That was a practice. There was a recent case that in the Third Circuit that said that you can't be removed now without notice and opportunity to be heard.
Right, that's what was actually just removed from this policy,
Right.
the changes in the current
But
policy.
theoretically, you meet those qualifications, 5 directors can have anybody removed from,
That was the standard wisdom. That was certainly the advice that I gave for 40-some years until this case came along. It is a Third Circuit case, so it's going to get a lot of respect. I don't know what I can tell you. I thought the case was off the wall, but
well, I agree.
I'm not on the court.
It's 5 votes on everything, so, I mean, if you want to remove Mr. Holmes,
No, you
go
can't
get
do it.
5 votes.
Well,
They did it back in 19...
I know, but this is 2024.
John, I agree. And sometimes my history comes back to haunt me. But back in the 80s, we had a president of this board, and she was removed by 5 members of the board. But I know, you're saying the law has been updated. I understand that. I'm just giving you a little bit of history.
You know, Mr. Casey, before that case came down, me and I'd say 90% of the school law bar in Pennsylvania would have agreed with you.
I know. As I said, I'm going back in time.
But the PSBA recommended changes in this policy are in line with the Third Circuit ruling. Is that correct? And
Yeah, there's one thing that I'm not sure it requires a full hearing. It requires some kind of an opportunity to be heard, so. But in general, yes, right. It's a basic due process, notice and an opportunity to be heard before removed. The Third Circuit said something that, as I said, I don't think any school practitioner would agree with before, which is that there's a property interest that you have in your board position. I don't think anybody would have really thought that that was the case before, but the Third Circuit said.
John, who would you have due process in front of?
It's up front of you.
So in other words, 5 people want you gone. You now go before the 5 people minimum that want you gone, and you have your due process. You get your say. I mean, it's a paper tiger.
Ultimately, you're going to have a vote of the board itself, and I would say that unless there is a violation of some protected right, some protected class, or something like that, that those 5 votes are probably going to prevail, but only after notification and hearing.
And that's not to remove someone from the board. That's from their committee post.
No, well, that's specifically from the president's position, but the other officers, I think, there's no reason to distinguish them based on the opinion.
But
I don't know about the committee posts, but
right.
the president, the secretary, the treasurer. any of those positions, the same logic would apply. I don't see any reason why they would be thought of any differently as having, property right that couldn't be taken away without basic due process.
The reason I ask that this be added to the agenda, though, is in addition to those recommended changes, that language that Director Chesak recited, I think it is at odds with our book of rules that states that the board president has the authority to appoint committee chairs. And I think the board president's authority to appoint committee chairs negates any claim that any of us are somehow holding on to a seat. I think we each have the right to request to continue our work.
No, I agree. I don't think that the Third Circuit opinion could be extrapolated to include committee chairs.
Right. I don't think.
No, I agree with you. I think it applies to those offices that are identified by the school code, which are president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. School code does not make any mention whatsoever of committees.
And I mean, my feeling with this, I was clear about it at the time. I think this takes a tool out of the board president's toolbox to be able to structure the board in a way that is positive for the governing of the district. But I also ask this question again. I mean, I don't have a problem with accepting the will of the board and moving on, but I asked it at this time because, well, first of all, when we received the information for the reorganization packet, I assumed that we would be seeing the principles of governance and leadership on this agenda as well as the book of rules. So I would join the chorus saying that that should have been on this agenda. But particular to this matter, I'm getting the impression from some emails, I think, Director Merkel, you had a potential future meeting date on your agenda this evening. I'm getting the impression from some of the conversations I'm hearing at this table, some emails that I'm seeing go by, that there are people who may be in the middle of what they're trying to accomplish, or who may feel they've just gotten an understanding of their role as it pertains to a committee or built relationships with administrators. And I think if they would like to continue in that capacity, they should at least have the right to make that request of whomever is serving as board president after reorganization.
So I guess just to be clear, so Attorney Freund, the president's choice would then supersede policy 005 as far as the appointing of committee chairs then?
The way I read the policy as it currently stands is that the president has the prerogative to appoint committee chairs and appoint people to the committees. And that's typically the way I see it done in most districts.
But John, I don't believe that's in policy. I believe that's in the book of rules. And
Robert's rule, that's where I saw it.
I guess I'm calling it the book of rules. We call it something else. But I mean, my understanding was always that policy ruled the day.
Well, I'm at a disadvantage not having the documents in front of me.
Right.
So it's hard to really give you professional advice without having the.
I guess I'm just looking like how to proceed with it, whether it's something we vote on to change, or if it's the president's choice, regardless of the policy, then we just leave it as it is and move forward. So I think.
Would you like John to send you his legal opinion on what supersedes what?
That would be wonderful. If we could send it to the whole board, that would be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, would you please?
But now just
I'm sorry I can't be more precise, but I really don't feel like I can be more precise without having the documents in front of me.
Sure.
John, you need time to research it.
So then, but if it comes up that the policy is more important in this matter, and there are directors that want to retain their seat, then is that something that we would want to bring up for Oh, we can make that change for the next meeting, correct?
Yeah, I think
If-
it's already on here, so I
Right.
think it would just come up for a vote then, is that correct?
The board can make whatever policy it wants with regard to committee chairs.
So since this is already on here, we could recommend the change if there was ones that wanted. I don't know any circumstance besides what you were saying about Marie, how she was, it seemed like she wanted to continue her work, potentially in that area. So so do we wait for John's email and then see if we want to?
Well, I'll look at it promptly
Okay.
this week before the holiday.
Right, I did send you guys an email, you and Aaron, I'm sorry, you and Virginia, an email asking that question as it was proposed to me so I could get guidance and provide it out. I sent it to you, last week was that? Where I said a question was asked, could someone please provide me with guidance so I could provide the accurate information instead of guessing? I did go back and read Robert's Rule of Order. My interpretation of it may be different than what you see, John, but last week I did send an email asking for guidance specifically on this so you could provide your legal opinion to the board when the question was raised.
I thought I did get back on something. I'll look at it tomorrow. It's a light day tomorrow.
Because I actually did, Jenny, I had you bring up the motion too, correct? That was voted on?
When it was voted on, correct?
Yeah, just,
Director Holmes?
So,
If I could just say something, I'm sorry, Katie.
no, go ahead.
That night was very confusing with voting on some of the changes with that policy, because Tom just reminded me, and Sean, we all thought we were voting on something else. So it was very confusing, the way everything was presented that night. So that's why we asked for it to be brought back up again.
So then can we, just like the other items tonight, can we take a consensus if there's enough members that want to see the change in the policy so that we know where we're going instead of, I mean, John's decision on this doesn't even matter if enough board members want to change the policy, right?
policy chair, how do you want the policy to read?
So maybe what we can do, we could leave it as it is, and we could go around and get consensus, yes or no, whether we are okay with it as it is right now, or if we'd want to see it changed.
Can you
Read
read how it
as
is right
is,
now?
As
you're
it
saying.
is. I don't, okay,
I have it open here if that's helpful.
yeah, that would be,
Sure.
thank you.
The same school director may not hold more than one office of the board. No commissioned officer, no, I'm lying, that is the wrong thing. I apologize. I scrolled,
Talking about the board
and I've
policy
lost it.
committees.
Well, I just, actually, I just have the line, if that's all that everyone's worried about, I have it written here, where it says a board
Thank
member
you, I'm
is
sorry.
ineligible for reappointment as committee chair of the same committee upon the expiration of the one-year term.
Yes.
So the consensus would be, do you agree with that you have a one-year term, or do you disagree with that you should be able to hold a multi-year term?
That's what you're gonna take consensus on, Jenny, with roll call?
Yep.
There's another part of that.
What part is that?
Yeah, you're gonna have to have the document in front of you, but there's another part that talks about the president's prerogative lower down in the policy.
So basically, we take a vote right now, but you're saying, it doesn't matter what the policy says as long as the majority goes, am I correct? So the majority can supersede the policy.
The
which is
majority
it.
can make any policy.
So we can take a roll call on that right now to
That's
supersede.
basically what I said before.
Yeah.
5.
For committee chairs.
Can we clarify if we're saying, yes, we want it how it is, if we say no, we would like to change the 1 year?
How about if we just go change and don't change?
Change
Why don't we do this? Why don't we wait for the legal opinion and then we'll make.
But
our
as we
mind.
said, we don't need the legal opinion if there's 5 members that want to change the policy anyway.
Yeah, you said 5. So right now, 5.
Do the
If we,
consensus.
if we want to, option 1, read it again, please, so she can,
So because option 1, a board member is ineligible for reappointment as committee chair of the same committee upon the expiration of their one-year term.
and then option 2 is if you just strike
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay, Jenny, yes, you have that?
Option 1 or option 2? So the board member is going to tell me option 1 or 2, correct?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Borthwick?
Option 2, just to change.
Mr. Casey?
I passed.
Mrs. Chesak?
Option 1 to stay the same.
Ms. Fox?
To change.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Option 2 to strike out.
Ms. Merkel?
Option 2,
Mr. McAndrew?
Option 2.
Mrs. Yanni?
1.
Mr. Holmes?
Option 2.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Now I could
Two.
vote.
I think he's messing with you.
Stop.
You didn't announce the vote.
I s-
I passed.
No,
I can come back now. According to Robert's rules, I'm allowed to vote now. You didn't
Before it was
announce your
announced.
vote.
I actually-
vote for number 1.
Okay, so then it's 5-3. No change.
Okay.
What have we voted for the change?
Option two was.
No, there should be
Wait, did you
three.
say 5-3?
There should be 3 to stay the
should be-
same.
There should
Three,
be
right.
6, there should be 9.
3 for option 1
Which has stayed the same.
6 for option 2.
and 6 for option 2.
Yep.
Okay.
So then, at the next meeting, the voting meeting, that part will be removed and we'll be voting on it and revised.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Follow up with Bert with an email just to make sure, please.
Okay.
You done with policy?
That's everything for policy.
Bender?
I have one other question about the policies. I believe that everything is, other than what we've just discussed, everything other than 253, gender identity and expression, is a PSBA recommendation. Is that true? No? Okay.
No, there was, our transgender policy is not consistent with what PSBA says. It's very different.
And where did those recommendations come from?
I don't know.
They were in place. So
Not for me.
yeah, I had been called into a situation where I referenced the policy, and upon referencing the policy, I asked for a legal review of the policy, and John reviewed it, and then he said this is not aligned with PSBA regulations.
Okay.
PSBA suggestion of policy.
So is what is in here now, what are the recommended changes aligned?
I think, are we talking about the changes that I suggested?
The gender.
I mean,
Yeah, well, specifically, there was a concern about what name change, and I think
It's our change. It says that on their Scranton School District
Yeah.
change.
okay.
Not
Yeah,
PSBA.
and I think that the policy as, prior to our changed, our recommendation for changes, essentially would have allowed name change even on official documents, at the request of a student. We definitely do not recommend that.
Okay.
And so the changes were, as you see them there, certain things that the student can request, other things that definitely need more formality to have them changed, and I think we addressed that in the changes.
It was like
but-
to have the change, the record change, it would have to be on the birth certificate or court order.
But, I mean, what I am reading here, it looks as though this preserves the student's dignity,
absolutely.
respects how they would like to be addressed.
Yes,
But
that still stays. on.
also puts the district in the appropriate legal standing in terms of documentation.
And that's
Okay.
kind of what I was going to say when I took a read of it, and I'm not an attorney. What I knew of current case law, which is what you eventually have to align to, we did not align with current case law. So I asked John to review the policy so that our policy aligned with the most current laws.
Okay.
So the child's rights are defended, but we also have the most legally defensible actions.
So, John, you recommend this?
I recommended the changes that I was asked to make.
Case closed.
Anything else on policy? Bender?
Under vendor relations, we'll have a motion to approve mom and pop contracts, if any, and a motion to approve the updated list of transportation drivers.
Before we go, we have executive session.
I need 10 minutes of your time in the room where we normally meet right back here.
Ty, and we'll be able to have the resolution on the gymnasium on the agenda,
Yes,
correct?
that was stated on
I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Before we go, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Stay safe. Motion to adjourn? You guys need how many, 5 minutes?
10 minutes.